Hello guys, welcome to this channel. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and drop a comment. It really helps me grow this channel and bring you more awesome recaps. Okay, without further ado, let's diving into the story. It all started high up in the sky, like way up there, in the clouds. A huge wyvern was just cruising through the air, making big circles. It looked free, like nothing in the world could tie it down. Down below, a man stared up at that wyvern. He felt kind of small, but also super inspired, totally shocked at how chill and independent that wyvern was. He started thinking that nothing in his life looked that free, and that was the one and only reason why he, a regular worker for the magical house Declan, decided to quit his crappy job as a troubleshooter. Yeah, you heard right. The wyvern gave him the final push because, in the sky, there was pure freedom. Fuck this stupid job anyway. But things didn't just stay calm and pretty. Out of nowhere, the scene switched up completely. There was this bird making creepy noises. The bird took off, and under all those spooky clouds, there was trouble. Some unlucky dude was getting straight up force choked, and he looked like he was about to pass out. The guy being choked realized he was in big trouble because the person attacking him, who people called Number 1, hid some insane power that normal troubleshooters were never supposed to have. Number 1 looked totally serious and said that he would be the one asking questions now. He pulled out a special book and wanted to know if it was a magic tome. The guy getting choked gasped that it was. Number 1, never missing a chance to tease, asked if maybe the choke could be a bit tighter, but also wondered if that guy really thought the whole squad came there just to take out one hunting dog with useless book. In his mind, if it was House Declan's business, a whole army could show up to protect their stuff, so he then wanted to know how to use the tome. The other guy told him he didn't know at all. Number 1 pointed out that greedy Declan probably had no clue either, or else they wouldn't have been dumb enough to hide the tome away in some dusty old basement. Even he, Number 1 himself, had no idea how to use it, and yet everyone kept chasing after him for it. There had to be something super valuable going on. The choked dude one more time told Number 1 to just hand over the magic tome, and even promised to beg the boss to go easy on him. Maybe even let him go back to being a troubleshooter again. But Number 1 just grinned, and thought there was no way he'd ever go back to such a crappy job. Then, like some cool villain, he asked the guy if he had any last words before he died. The dude tried to cuss at him, and Number 1 thought those were pretty bold words for someone about to bite the dust. Then, things got even crazier. Another man came walking up slowly, and Number 1, who usually acted tough, got a cold shiver down his back. The second man's vibe was just too powerful, like he could crush you with a look. Number 1 realized this was someone super dangerous. There could only be one person with an aura like that. That man introduced himself, all calm and polite, as Farron von Declan. He was the boss, the head of the super famous magical house Declan from the eastern continent. Number 1 thought, oh crap, this was really bad. Farron asked if he could just hand over the magic tome, and they could talk after that. Number 1, who had spent over 10 years as a troubleshooter, said that he had never ever seen the head of House Declan in person before. He knew the family was a big deal, and now he was facing the strongest head they had probably ever had. He started to wonder what kind of madman this guy could be. But as soon as he looked at Farron's evil face, he realized this was a total nightmare. This guy's power is not a fucking joke for real. For a second, Farron just laughed a little, but then dude went all out and laughed like an evil boss. But Number 1 didn't even flinch. He just matched Farron's crazy energy. He thought that maybe if he hadn't met that free wyvern way back, none of this would be happening. That wyvern is the one awakened his greed to be free. But, damn. He said it was just unlucky for him that the head himself was here, because Farron's aura was next level. Nobody could match it. He called him the most overwhelming mage ever. Farron admitted it would be easier to just kill Number 1 and take the tome, but he wanted to cut to the chase. He offered for Number 1 to return to the family, and said that if he gave back the tome, he'd ignore all the bad stuff Number 1 had done. Number 1 didn't answer right away, so Farron kept talking. He said Number 1 had a ton of talent. After watching his fight, he wondered why they never noticed it sooner. Even though Number 1 came from nothing, just using basic troubleshooter tricks, he still managed to be insanely good. Farron said if Number 1 worked for House Declan, he could fly way above everyone else. But bro, Number 1 clearly stopped listening. He just stared up at the sky again, thinking about how chill a wyvern looked above. Farron tried to get his attention again, saying he'd still need the tome. Number 1 agreed, but then said he had his own rule. If they made him the boss, he'd think about giving the tome back. That made Farron mad, but he kept it together. Number 1 asked if Farron had watched the earlier fight. Then, as a final move, he finished off the guy he had been choking, just to show how far he was willing to go. He explained that Farron should totally know how many people he'd already taken out with these hands. Now Farron just lost it. He said that if this drama kept up, there was a good chance number 1 would die right there. Number 1 knew Farron wasn't wrong, but he charged in anyway, thinking to himself that he was way too far in to stop caring about what happened next. Both of their powers started going nuts, and number 1 thought that you couldn't really know if someone's magic was stronger or weaker until you actually checked. Farron decided to teach him a lesson. He pulled out a spell, he just stretched his hand, and suddenly a crazy magic circle appeared. Then, bam! An earth spear shot up from under number 1's feet. Right away, Farron hit him again with another one, this time from straight ahead. Number 1 realized he was in serious trouble because these attacks were coming way too fast. But, lucky for him, he dodged to the side just in time and thought that this was what it meant to fight the head of a super famous family. There was no way to find a hole in Farron's defense. Farron kept up the pressure and asked if number 1 was lost in thought. Suddenly, number 1 crashed into some kind of magical wall he didn't expect. Now Farron really turned up the heat. He made fun of number 1, pointing out how he just talked about measuring things to see if they were stronger or weaker. But sometimes, he said, you just knew right away who was outmatched, without any measuring at all. Number 1 pressed his hand on the magic barrier and then looked up to see a huge magic circle form above him. Farron said that this, right now, was how big the gap really was between the two of them. Number 1 couldn't do a thing except watch as the big attack came flying in. But it didn't end with number 1 getting wiped out. Farron decided not to kill him, even though he totally could have. He just beat him up pretty badly and then asked if number 1 was finally ready to talk things over. After the big magic blast, the dust started to settle, and number 1 asked if maybe, just maybe, if he bowed down and agreed to be Farron's shadow, would Farron actually let him live? Farron didn't buy that for a second, and just looked at him like, really bro? After all this mess, who would believe it? But while he was saying that, number 1 was already getting ready for another big move. He thought there was no way he would say yes to working for Declan again. This dude wasn't joking. He started charging up a move that looked a lot like the spirit gun from Yu Yu Hakusho. Seriously. He said he was done being their dog, and then blasted out a massive energy beam right at Farron. But Farron, looking like he had all the cheat codes, blocked it without even breaking a sweat. Number 1, pretty ticked, said there was no way he would ever go back to being their dog. He explained that just because the collar looked nice and the house was huge, it didn't mean he wasn't stuck in a kennel like a regular mutt. Farron didn't care and called him pathetic. Stuff was about to get crazy all over again. Farron just lifted his cane a little and tapped it on the ground. Suddenly, a magic circle showed up underneath, starting small at first but then growing and growing until it covered the whole battlefield. Like, bro, it was huge. Farron said he just wanted to show him real power, so he'd regret picking a fight in his final moments. Number 1 looked up, and he wasn't even surprised. He figured things would go south as soon as he ran into Farron. Lightning started going nuts all over the sky, making everything feel super dramatic. Number 1 started thinking, now that he really understood, that the reason he looked up at the wyvern flying in the sky that one day was because of how trapped he felt, thanks to House Declan. Next thing, Number 1 came back to his senses. He was all dazed and beaten up, but alive. Farron told him it was actually impressive that he held out so long, since he really expected him to just die. He wanted to know if Number 1 finally realized how different their powers were. Number 1, not exactly happy, admitted that Farron was freakishly strong. Farron asked if he was ready to talk now or if there was more to say. Number 1 just wanted to know if they wanted him to be some troubleshooter again, but Farron told him no, they didn't want that. What he wanted was for Number 1 to take over as the head of the Bongshin family. Number 1, shocked, was like, hold on, you want me to be the head of a family? He said House Declan was strong enough to go against the crown, so if they were asking this, they must be after full loyalty by making him the boss of a vassal family. He realized this had to be the plan all along. Farron said he guessed Number 1 didn't realize just how valuable he really was, and that he wanted both him and the magic tome. Number 1 stared at Farron and then slowly pulled out the tome, holding it out towards him. Farron told him he made the right decision and that this would settle all his crimes. But as Farron reached for it, Number 1's aura started burning the book. Farron freaked. Like, what on earth was Number 1 thinking? Number 1 just said he never promised to give it back in one piece, and that's exactly what he was doing. With that, Farron told him that he wasn't going to die peacefully now. Bro, he said, get ready, and snapped his fingers. A blue flame started pouring out from Farron, surrounding Number 1. Farron said this was Declan's blue flame, the kind that never died out. He told him he would burn him, to make sure the Number 1 feeling is regret for the rest of eternity. Number 1 didn't even flinch. He said there was nothing to regret because the only other option was to live as their dog, and he would rather go back to the gray zone than do that. If he could not, then dying wasn't such a bad deal. He started laughing out loud in the middle of all those blue flames, saying he had never felt this free before. It was too bad he wouldn't escape alive, but if he got reborn, he'd try to be even more free and maybe get some proper revenge. Now, the flames kept getting bigger and hotter, but then something totally insane happened. Number 1, didn't die. The fire was eating up everything, but he was totally fine. He was confused and started looking around. Everything was just frozen, all weird, like time stopped. He wondered if he was going nuts. The only thing moving was the tome, which floated up out of his hands, and then some crazy golden magic mark appeared on his chest. He freaked out, trying to figure out what in the world was going on. A bright light then engulfed him. When he opened his eyes again, suddenly the story did a total flip. He was somewhere, with a coin dropped into a bucket and got all confused. Isn't he just burning up a second ago? So what was this place? He looked around and thought it seemed super familiar. And then, bam! He figured it out. He was in the gray zone. This was the rough place where he used to live before ever becoming a troubleshooter, where he begged every single day just to survive. He seriously couldn't believe it. He kept asking himself if he really just traveled back in time. Later on, he walked down to a river, needing some time to think. He saw his reflection and figured it had to be him, but he was a lot younger than before. He looked at his chest and groaned. There was a weird mark there, the strange mark from before. He had no clue what happened, but it had to be the magic tome's doing. He started thinking maybe time travel was the whole point of that artifact. And, bro, when the top dude like Farron comes after something himself, you know it's important. But honestly, nobody really knew what that tome could do. Maybe he's just lucky to get back into the past? Bro then really went to whatever mode now. He decided he wasn't going to sit around and question any of this crazy time travel stuff. He was just going to do exactly what he wanted. The world felt way too real for any of it to be a dream. The smell of rank sewage made it super clear. So not only was he alive, but now, he felt like anything was possible. He could actually be successful at whatever he picked. But then, he started to think, what did he even want from this new chance? He used to have a dream, back in the day. It wasn't just his dream, it kind of belonged to his old comrade too. In fact, that dream was the reason he ever wanted to retire from being a troubleshooter at all. He remembers long ago, his best friend called him Number 1, but then actually called his real name, Aster. Finally, someone used his name. Number 1 is dope, but it's a bit cringe to be honest. His comrade said that they both started out as vagrants in the gray zone. They had nothing to their names. No new clothes, no nice food, not even an education. He then asked Aster what he thought hurt the most. Aster just shrugged, saying not eating sucked. But the comrade told him, if it was just hunger, they wouldn't have ended up this way. He asked again, what really dragged their lives down so far? Aster stayed chill, picking his nose, saying he was fine. His comrade snapped and said, that's exactly the reason they were in the gutter, because Aster never cared. Aster just kept going with his, yeah, I'm fine attitude, and his buddy started to get mad. Then his friend said the worst thing wasn't hunger, but not being educated. If they had been able to learn and study, maybe they wouldn't be stuck as slaves to the rich and powerful. And, if he ever retired, there was just one thing the comrade wanted: to build a library. Yeah, you heard right, a library. Aster thought that was a pretty crazy dream. But he laughed and wanted something even bigger: a tower. Aster thought he had no reason, just that tall things were cool to him, and he didn't care where it was built. He wanted to make a place where anybody, no matter if they were rich, poor, or anything else, could read books for free. Bro, you got my respect. And there was one special book he wanted at the front door: Declan's secret manual, right at the entrance for everyone to see. So even little vagrants from the gray zone, kids with no family, or just random folks could grab it. The book would have Declan's family crest on it, and would show all those wild magic moves that Declan kept hidden from the world. He was so hyped, just thinking about it made his mouth water. The only problem? How was he going to steal that manual? Well, that was for future him to worry about. He figured if he managed to spread that manual, people would celebrate him like a hero. That was the plan. But, dude, as soon as he said all this, wham, he got kicked right in the head. He started to tip over as another guy, kind of like a school bully, yelled that he had been looking for Aster, since he was supposed to hold his seat but was hiding away instead. The bully asked if Aster wanted to die, and started stomping on him for good measure. Aster was confused, trying to figure out who this idiot even was, and why he was getting ambushed. He remembered, though, he had survived tons of fights before as a troubleshooter. So, Aster grabbed the bully's foot in mid-stomp, and the dude was shocked he even dared block it. Aster said that since the bully had hit him 7 times, he owed him 70 hits back, and balled up his fist for a punch. The bully looked nervous, but when Aster tried to uppercut him, oops, he missed, and his wrist made a nasty cracking sound instead. Aster winced, asking what the hell just happened and why he still hurt so much. The bully didn't miss his chance. He socked Aster in the face, making fun of him for even trying to fight, and asking if he was nuts. Aster agreed it hurt like crap, and what was even worse was how damn embarrassing this whole scene was. But then karma did its thing. The bully tripped on a rock and crashed backward, right into the disgusting river. Aster thought, now's his chance. The bully, now gagging on muddy water, yelled after Aster, wanting to know where he was running off to. Aster said this wasn't running away, it was just a tactical retreat with style. He decided he'd remember this punk's face, that every hit would be a badge of honor. Because, hey, he was a pro troubleshooter who didn't know the word quit. Once he got away and hid in the alleys, the truth hit him. His young body was clearly super weak. He even hurt himself trying to punch, so maybe the dream of a giant magic library tower needed to wait until he got stronger. First, fix the body. Then, out of nowhere, a voice asked if he was hungry. He looked over and saw another little kid staring at him. Aster asked if the kid even knew who he was. The kid said nope. Figures. The kid was a mess, but his clothes weren't super fancy, actually. Are you blind? Even one glance and I can see this kid is rich or something. Aster instantly figured the kid was a fallen noble, probably tossed out after some spoiled noble family drama. In other words, this kid was a disaster waiting to happen, a total walking bomb. He called him Kid, but the boy replied that his name was Damien. Aster rolled with it, but then Damien randomly told him his mom's name was Bianca. Aster just thought, why does it sound like I'm learning way too much right now? But looking at that stupid face, Aster realized Damien probably had some issues and apologized. In his mind, Aster decided he definitely needed to avoid this kid before things got dangerous. Who said nobody would think he was the kidnapper or something? But Damien just stood there, and Aster was confused. He asked why Damien wasn't leaving yet. Damien answered that he wanted to stick with him, making Aster think about smacking that white hair kid just to get rid of him. When he told Damien to scram, Damien noticed his hurt wrist, reached out, and offered to heal it. Aster was surprised as Damien started casting healing magic. Suddenly, Aster's wrist started to feel better, and he realized this wasn't just some simple spell. The Light of Healing was a super rare technique that belonged to the Blander family, a powerful family ruined by Declan. Aster's troubleshooter gut told him he was getting stuck in something sketchy. But why was a Blander kid wandering around the gray zone? At this point in time, the Blander family should still be strong. Aster kept saying Damien's name a few times, trying to remember Damien's name from the Blander clan, just to check if this kid was really who he thought. That's when Damien's whole vibe changed, his tone shifted, and his eyes? Bro, they were 2 totally different colors. The minute Damien asked if Aster was calling for him, Aster had one of those oh crap moments. He remembered hearing stories about a Blander kid with weird eyes. He suddenly realized who was standing right in front of him. This wasn't just any slow-looking kid. This was the monster of Blander, Damien von Blander. People said he was the Mad Butcher, the guy who wouldn't even die if you killed him. He would keep healing with his crazy magic like some random immortal maniac. Yeah, a real monster in human skin. But then Damien started staring at an ant, super hyped about it. Aster looked at him and wondered if this was really the same guy. He thought back to before his time rewind, when he had gone to the Blander family estate because Declan's higher-ups told him to. To be honest, he never knew why troubleshooters like him and his buddy were always sent to do the dirty jobs. But that's how it was. He remembered his comrade whispering that there were rumors about a monster in the Blander household, and that tons of people had died there. When Aster asked if it was like some kind of ogre, his friend just shook his head. This wasn't an ogre, or any animal. It was a real monster, just hiding inside a person. He remembered watching someone rip people apart, using wild healing magic over and over, and laughing the whole time. Nothing was more terrifying. They called him the Monster of Blander for a reason. Nobody could kill him. Still, Aster wondered, why would someone that important, the true heir of Blander, be hanging out in the gray zone like this? While he wondered, Damien just said one word: food. Aster asked what he meant, and Damien replied that he wanted to eat. He even said his mom told him he had to eat well to stay healthy, and that Aster was sick because he wasn't eating enough. And you know what? Aster had to admit, the kid had a point. He asked Damien if he had any cash. Damien pulled out a bucket. Seriously, a full bucket. Of money. This kid is rich as hell. That was all Aster needed. He wrapped his arm around Damien and declared that they were friends now, on the spot. "Yeah, our MC is so smart, I like him." Damien was confused and wanted to know why, but Aster just told him, "When you say you're friends, then that's it. Friends share everything they've got." He told Damien they should go eat, and Damien actually fell for it, getting excited. After filling up on a big meal later that night, Aster let out a massive burp. He washed up and felt like a new man. Damien, though, looked confused and wandered around. Aster asked what his problem was. Damien admitted he had no idea there were houses above some restaurants. He always just slept outside. This was the first time he noticed. Aster understood, but then Damien blurted out that he didn't have a dad. Like, who the fuck asking, bro? This kid is weird as hell. Aster felt his headache coming back, and figured he'd better ask something else, or this stupid kid was gonna blurt out something nonsensical again. So he asked how long Damien had been here alone. Damien said he ran away from home about 10 naps ago. Aster tried to understand, did he mean 10 days? Damien said he napped a lot, sometimes twice a day, but he hadn't napped since he got there, since the ground was way too hard. Aster figured it couldn't be more than 3 or 4 days, but Damien didn't really know. Just forget it, dude. Aster just looked down at his pillow and thought this kid was going to drive him nuts. But, hey, for now, if he was stuck in the gray zone, maybe acting as Damien's nanny wasn't a bad idea. He's fucking loaded. Making friends with the Blander family could come in handy, especially if he had to go up against Declan in the future. And, bro, prestigious families also had huge libraries. But before thinking about books and connections, there was one more thing on his mind, settling the 70 hits he owed from earlier. Revenge was coming. He told Damien not to bother him because he was going to practice, and if Damien bugged him, it would have consequences. Damien asked if he was going to do breathing practice, and Aster said yeah, and Damien could practice after he was finished. He then lay down and thought back. In his past life, he learned magic with the foundation from a cheap starter kit troubleshooters got, but those powers hit a wall real quick. The limit is so shallow. That's why he broke into noble houses, risking his neck every time, just to steal better spells. That journey nearly killed him more than once, but he got really good at learning everything. Night arts, spirit magic, summoning, alchemy, and all kinds of other wild stuff. But nothing was crazier than the power he saw right before he died, Farron's magic, the stuff that could destroy worlds. This time, Aster knew exactly what he wanted. The Declan's legendary spell, the Heavenly Origin technique. That was the base for all Declan magic, and could handle any kind of mana. Aster had memorized it once for research, but never got to use it. Now, he was ready. As Aster started the breathing technique, the golden magic mark on his chest felt like it was melting him from the inside out. It was crazy hot, like having lava in his body. He tried to stay focused, telling himself he could survive. He glanced down. Impurities started leaking out of his hands. Just wild. This kind of spell, usually only used by nobles, burned all the junk right out of your blood, clearing the magical paths in your body. People called it a mana shower, and Aster could feel every bit of bad stuff getting roasted away. Does this crest help him purify the spell, or what? He didn't know at all, but this pain is sure fucking hurt. When he finally opened his eyes, he gasped. How much time had passed? Damien was out cold, totally knocked out. But more importantly, Aster realized his circuits were totally clean. His mana was pure, even better than last time. Sure, it still might not be enough to beat a boss like Farron. Man, even if he was born 100 times, that fight would always be a nightmare. But one thing had changed for sure. His odds just went way up. And if Aster ever had a talent, it was never giving up, even when the chances looked like nothing. Now, with a monster as a roommate and a second shot at life, Aster was ready for a brand new grind. Dude, the next day was just as wild as before. Damien woke up super happy that his hair was now brown instead of platinum blonde. Aster told him he had to hide his real hair color, and he also switched out his clothes so that nobody from the Blander family would recognize him for now. Once that was done, Aster said the only thing left was to head out. Damien wanted to know the plan, and he called Aster friend, which was kind of cute. Aster just smiled and told him they were about to go cause some chaos together. That's classic Aster right there. They headed down an alley, and out popped the same dude from earlier, the bully. I will call him Stupid. Stupid was all chilled out, talking about the good nap he just had, but then he saw Aster coming and started talking trash about where the youngest was off to now, and why he looked so clean. Stupid even joked that maybe Aster showered in the sewer. He also noticed Damien, saying that the kid looked rich, but Aster didn't even let him finish. He socked him in the stomach. He told Stupid that he finally found him and was there to give back every hit he owed from yesterday. Suddenly, a bunch of other thugs rushed out of the building. Now Aster and Damien were surrounded. The others called Aster the youngest. But Aster was not afraid. He said these faces were all familiar. Yeah, this will shit gonna be fucking fun. He wondered how far he'd get today, and then got to work. Damien, on the other hand, was stupidly asking if they were going to play. Aster then punched one guy in the face, the next in the gut, and just kept swinging. Bro was loving it, totally in his element, while Damien just watched, amazed by how Aster fought with mana, clenching his fist and swinging over and over. Damien said it was amazing, and Aster told him he should say it was awesome instead. Damien got a little too hyped, thinking Aster was way cooler than he really was. One of the guys Aster bully fell right in front of Damien. Damien noticed he was hurt and said not to worry, he could heal him. The guy was confused but accepted his fate. Damien healed him up, and right away, Aster yanked the guy up, telling Damien this would make things easier. Now he could keep beating people up without having to worry about hurting them for real. The alley echoed with screams for what felt like hours. One by one, all the bullies ended up on the ground, grabbing their bruised butts. Aster, then looking at Stupid, grabbed a paddle and started giving him payback. He asked how many times he'd been hit before, but Stupid, honestly, didn't remember. So Aster just called for Damien, and Damien wanted to know if it was his turn again. That's when it hit them. Aster would beat the thugs, Damien would heal them, and they'd just repeat that until everyone begged for mercy. Later that night, Aster thanked everyone for the fun, and the others thanked him back. Aster felt pretty proud, actually. While Damien said he just wanted to play again sometime. Aster was low-key proud too. He just managed to land over 100 hits per person, which meant he dealt a total of over 1,000. Even for him, that was a first. He laughed, thinking that this was easy for a veteran troubleshooter like him. The bully called over, asking if they could go home now, because after all that, everyone had had enough. Aster said sure, but then the bully pointed out that this was actually his own house, hoping maybe Aster and Damien would take the hint and leave. Aster said that that would be kind of tough, didn't he know? The bully replied that they'd just go instead. So, the thugs left their own house without any hard feelings, just totally wiped out. As Aster watched his friends leave, he suddenly sensed someone coming at them, fast and sneaky. It felt like another troubleshooter, a real pro who moved like a shadow. Aster guessed it was a pursuer sent for Damien, and he realized maybe he wasn't as careful as he thought. He couldn't believe the Blander family had responded so quickly. The pressure from this person was huge, and if the guy knew any magic, even one spell would be rough to handle right now, not to mention fighting hand to hand. But hey, this was nothing new for Aster. He was a veteran, after all. So he gathered up mana at his fingertips, planning to use his own spirit gun move. He compressed the mana bullet, making it stronger and smaller, ready to go. Then he spun around, his coat flying out like some action hero, and pointed at the spot where the pursuer appeared. But instead of a fight, things took a weird turn. The guy dropped to his knees and slid across the ground, shouting out that he was so glad to see his young master. Damien saw who it was and yelled, asking what Alfredo was doing there. Yep, his actual name was Alfredo. Aster laughed, thinking it was like Batman with his own butler. Alfredo said they'd been searching for Damien everywhere, not knowing what he was up to or where he'd gone. He claimed he hadn't slept a wink from worrying, and now he wouldn't let go, begging Damien to come home or just kill him instead. The drama, bro. Alfredo then apologized for the scene, introducing himself to Aster as the butler of the Blander family. Aster politely introduced himself too. Alfredo said the young master really liked Aster, and if Aster was okay with it, he should join them. Aster thought about the offer for a second. As a rule, he hated getting involved with high-ranking families, but honestly, having a connection with one couldn't hurt since he'd planned on it anyway. Plus, the Blander estate was on the way to Zenian Academy, which everyone said was the best school in the East, with the biggest and baddest library. Aster was going to build the best library ever, so checking out Zenian's didn't sound half bad. So, Aster told Alfredo he understood and thanked him. Alfredo went to get the carriage and told them to wait. Aster grinned, thinking sure, he went a little off the rails, but this new lead was a good thing. And now, he was about to see how the Blander family's food tasted. Maybe this was the start of a whole new adventure. Bro, the night was just getting started for Aster and Damien. They rolled up to the Blander estate, which looked totally next-level fancy, even in the dark. Alfredo was right there at the door, greeting them all official, welcoming Aster to the Blander family. Aster hopped out of the carriage, feeling a little hyped. This was his first real visit to the famous Blander mansion. Alfredo told them it was late and they needed to rest. He called over a maid, Lancy, to take care of things. Yet she scolded Damien right away, telling him to follow her, and Damien started laughing, all nervous before yelling that he was in trouble and dashing away from her. Meanwhile, deeper in the estate, Alfredo strolled down the endless halls and knocked on a fancy door. The person inside, a woman, told him to come in. This was Bianca, Damien's mom, and the real boss around here. She asked right away about her son. Alfredo said Damien had been stuck in the 7th black and white zone, but he brought him home safe. As Alfredo stood there, Bianca kind of lost it for a second. She exploded something on her desk, cast a magic circle, and started ranting about what Damien was doing out there, and if he was really alright. She said if even a hair on his head got hurt, she'd lose it for real. Alfredo stayed calm and told her to listen. She finally relaxed, cancelled her magic, and sat down. She said it was a relief, and Alfredo agreed it was lucky too, because nobody wanted to see her unleash her old blood witch fury. If anyone ever hurt Damien, there'd be no one left standing. She complimented Alfredo, but he just said he was only doing his job. Still, he mentioned one weird thing. Bianca asked what it was. Alfredo said it was about Damien's new friend. Bianca wanted to know what was unusual about this boy. Alfredo thus explained that Aster had sensed Alfredo's presence before he even showed up. He was already ready to fight. When they faced each other, Alfredo saw a mana bullet in the boy's hand. Bianca was impressed. That was some busted talent. Kids like that shouldn't be living in the gray zone. Alfredo agreed, and said that's exactly why he needed a favor. So, bright and early the next day, Alfredo called for Aster and, with lots of confidence, asked if Aster would become his successor. Aster nearly choked. What the hell was this butler talking about? Alfredo was sure Aster wouldn't say no, because being a butler for a top family was a big deal, especially for someone from the slums, but Aster shot it down right away. No thanks. Alfredo looked stunned, like he couldn't even believe it. Damien suddenly piped in, wanting to know what was going on, and Aster explained. He was grateful to be considered, but he liked things the way they were. Alfredo started analyzing him out loud, saying Aster was probably just cocky because he was a gray zone vagrant with raw talent. Alfredo shared that he, too, was born ordinary, wild with no real limits. But then he told Aster the world was huge, and he needed to see it. Aster said, yeah, he knew the world wasn't small. Alfredo figured Aster maybe felt invincible, like he could do anything right now. Yet Aster told him, not really, bro. Alfredo was getting irritated but held it together. He asked Aster if he'd ever heard the story of the goblin who grew up in a canyon, never knowing the outside world was way scarier. Aster grinned and said he didn't think of himself as a goblin. He was more of a wyvern, and for him, freedom was everything. That did it. Alfredo finally lost it and said Aster didn't know crap. So, Alfredo said he'd show him personally just how wild the world could be. He marched Aster over to the butler's training area and busted through the doors. Inside, all the young butlers, about Aster's age, turned to look. They were training hard, like elite students at some magic sports academy. Alfredo showed them off, telling Aster that these were all top talents, officially recognized by the Blander family. Alfredo bet Aster could feel the difference. Aster had to admit, they were legit, strong, and looked way older than they really were. Their subtle auras filled the whole room, but Aster saw it underneath. These guys were still just goblins, competing and hungry, not a wyvern like him. Alfredo then asked if Aster would change his mind now. If Aster succeeded, he would outshine all of them. But Aster said, nah, that he actually hated the spotlight. Hearing this, Alfredo was confused and asked why. Just then, one of the boys raised his hand. His name was Winster. He told Alfredo that if Aster could really sense how strong they were, there was no way he'd refuse the offer. If Alfredo was okay with it, Winster wanted to give Aster a little taste of magic. Alfredo asked if he was challenging him to a duel, and Winster said, not really, just to show what magic was like. Alfredo thought Winster was getting a little bold, but actually liked the idea. He offered Aster a choice. Did he want to take Winster up on a duel? Aster saw right away that these butlers didn't respect him. They just thought he was some lucky street rat who got here by accident. When Alfredo let him pick his opponent, Aster shocked everyone. He pointed at Winster, then pointed at 4 more, and said he'd fight 5 butlers at once. Winster was stunned, and Aster challenged them to bring it on if they weren't scared. Alfredo was a bit surprised too, but then burst out into laughter. He said this was just the bold, wild spirit he was looking for in a successor. He asked if Aster would take responsibility for what he just said, because that was almost like an insult to the Blander family's honor. Aster said he'd take responsibility. Well, Alfredo loved it. He told Aster if he lasted even 1 minute, he'd win a prize. If not, then Alfredo would hold him responsible, probably meaning, time to join them for real. Aster knew it was a setup, but he agreed anyway. They all headed for the training yard. Some butlers worried this was too much and dangerous. Yet Alfredo answered that that's what made it deal-breaking. If Aster got hurt, he'd grow from it. But if anything did happen to Damien's guest, the instructor would be finished. The instructor asked Damien what he thought, and Damien just looked nonchalant, saying his friend won't be in danger. With that, the instructor figured Damien was just being an airhead again. Lancey, always ready to scold, told Damien not to get involved or else. After that, Alfredo told the instructor to just start the match already. The instructor sighed, figuring rules were rules, and finally said he'd do his best, even though this whole duel was miles past what he signed up for. Lancey, the maid, kept lecturing Damien, but suddenly she turned away, deep in thought. She told Damien she'd be back, so not to get involved. Damien said he understood and then did a super sneaky evil laugh, like, you just knew this dude was planning something. Meanwhile, outside on the training grounds, things were getting wild. The instructor announced he'd explain the rules, saying at first the duel would be turn-based. But Alfredo, standing there with that big I'm the boss energy, just tossed that idea and said to make it a free-for-all instead. The instructor didn't care anymore, so he agreed. They changed it to a free-for-all brawl, and it would go until one side surrendered, but the instructor could stop at any time, so they should keep that in mind. All the butlers were staring each other down, especially Winster, who was ticked. He thought Alfredo might pity Aster, but was sure that Aster was about to get wrecked and embarrassed for real. The instructor gave the signal to start, and boom, the duel was on. But bro, it did not go the way they expected. Winster got punched in the stomach right away, knocked the wind out of him. When he turned around, he saw his whole squad already down, holding their stomachs and groaning in pain. Aster just stepped forward, calm as ever, saying it was better if he gave the experience himself and warned them never to underestimate the little guy. Winster realized Aster was using mini magic bullets and couldn't believe it. He thought it was basic magic that wasn't useful in real fights. But Aster told him the second rule: never judge someone too quickly. Then Aster started firing more magic bullets, headshotting everyone like he was playing a game. He said the third lesson was that the world was big and harsh. He closed in and absolutely hammered Winster in the face, sending him flying. He was teaching with his fists, and said they'd better remember every lesson. Winster called him a lunatic and said this had nothing to do with magic. But Aster explained it really was magic, infusing his own body with it. Physical magic. Yeah, I love chaos. Everyone around was shocked, even the instructor and the other butlers. They watched as Aster wiped the floor with them, just breezing through all of them. Alfredo was stunned too. He kept thinking, that's insane. Aster compressed those mana bullets 4 or 5 times, at least. If Aster had hit him with all that before, he wouldn't have left without any injury. He realized this was real, natural-born mana control, and our boy just seemed built for fighting. Off to the side, Damien was busy healing everyone up, so the brawl could keep going. It was kind of nuts. Then suddenly, Bianca showed up. Alfredo totally panicked when he saw her, and the instructor realized this was Lancey's plan to save everyone. Lancey just nodded all innocent. Bianca asked what on earth was happening here. Alfredo tried to play it cool, saying he was just testing everyone with a little exercise. But our mommy, Bianca, called bullshit and wanted to know what kind of test ended up like this. She scolded Damien for helping too, and told Alfredo to have everyone go back to their room. She turned to the instructor, Runfit, who sadly admitted he did his best. Still, Bianca just fired him on the spot. Poor guy, he did not deserve that. That night, Bianca pulled Alfredo aside and told him she knew what he was up to, but he went too far. Alfredo apologized, accepting whatever punishment was coming. Bianca wanted to hear all about the fight, and if Damien helped. Alfredo said no, Damien didn't really get involved, but he admitted he was still super proud of how Aster fought. He brought up those magic bullets again, saying Aster compressed them 4 or 5 times, which made them way more powerful. Bianca realized that meant Aster had amazing mana control. Defeating 5 trained trainees on his own with just magic bullets was a big deal. She said even top mages struggled to handle pure mana. She asked Alfredo about the offer to make Aster his successor, and Alfredo said Aster shot that down right away, not even pretending to think about it. Bianca just said she'd need to take a new look at Aster and give him a better evaluation. She told Alfredo to go bring Aster to see her. A little later, Aster walked in. Bianca told him to sit, while Damien stuffed his face with snacks nearby. Seriously, that kid was always munching. Aster said he heard she called for him, and she said yes. But before getting into it, she slid a fancy-looking box over to him. Aster asked what it was. Bianca explained it was the reward gift Alfredo promised. Aster was surprised, since he hadn't expected something prepared by her. Bianca told him to open it up. He did, and inside was a super shiny golden item. She said it was a high-level item. something only the best mage recruits in all Blander get. Aster was cautious. He thought gifts this nice always came with some strings attached. A free meal was one thing, but a high-class gift? That usually meant a hidden price. He even asked if eating it meant he had to join Blander, but Bianca said no. He checked if it was poisoned. Of course it wasn't. You dumbass. She even promised there were really no conditions. It was just a way to say thanks for helping Damien, plus an apology for what happened at training. Damien was still busy eating sweets, while Aster figured the kid would get diabetes soon at this rate. He finally accepted the gift and admitted it was much nicer than he expected. Then Bianca told him she actually had a proposal. Aster was not surprised. He called it. Nothing free in this world, right? Except hitting like and commenting on this video. Do it now or I'm gonna ask Aster to kick all of your asses. Bianca then patted Damien's head, saying she wanted to arrange for Aster to go with Damien to the academy. Damien had been meant to enroll the year before, but didn't want to, so they waited. In the end, Damien ran away, so now she was asking for Aster to go along, since Damien liked him. Even Damien said if his friend went, he'd be happy. Aster could see the logic. For Bianca, it really was a big deal. Forcing Damien to go would just make him run away again, and there was no easy solution. It was also a solid opportunity for Aster. In a world where bloodlines and connections meant everything, networking at a top academy would help big time. He still felt it was a leash, but promised to think about it. Bianca said to let her know when he made up his mind. Then, just being curious, she asked why he turned down the butler job Alfredo offered. Aster grinned and joked that back when they met, Alfredo did a knee slide, and his own knees were way too precious for any of that. Bianca was like, what does that even mean? And even Alfredo, listening nearby, wondered if that was the actual reason. Yeah, our boy doesn't want to do trash work anymore. Later that night, inside his room, Aster was deep into meditation, blue magical energy swirling around him, lighting up his face like a boss. Inside, he was thinking, wow, this high-level item he'd just absorbed was even better than he thought. Only 10% in, and his mana was already on another level. He wondered if having a flame-born body from House Delcan now made it work even better. Usually, magic stuff came with all kinds of impurities, but this? Nothing. It was all pure boost. He was hyped, but he was also thinking about the academy offer. And yeah, it seemed like there were huge upsides, but bro could not help feeling like it might be a trap too. Still, he already knew he was going to accept. After that, Aster stood up and decided he needed some air. So, what did he do? He stepped outside to wander the hallways and maybe do a lap around the place. The mansion's hallways at night were straight out of a fancy movie. That's when Aster ran into this dude with platinum blonde hair and gold eyes. Clearly another member of the Blander family. But the platinum guy wasn't Damien, so Aster guessed he was some cousin or side branch relative. He wondered why the noble family was always so difficult. The platinum blonde dude leaned against the wall and called out, asking if he was Aster. When he took a closer look, he started acting a little sassy, making fun of Aster's hair, then doing a double take, like he couldn't figure it out. But he stared at Aster's eyes for a second and said they matched up with what he'd heard. That faintly irritating look in our boy's eyes is fit perfectly. Aster felt the dude was just asking for trouble, so he struck a silly pose and flashed the biggest, fakest smile. Damn, I got goosebumps from the screen. The platinum guy got so caught off guard that all his attitude just melted. He said the eyes looked kind, actually, so he tried to leave, but just then, Alfredo came running in, looking like he'd been up all night. Alfredo was raving. He needed to clear up a misunderstanding about why he had knelt down before, and told him again, being a butler wasn't such a bad gig. Aster just stared at him with an even weirder smile. The platinum-haired guy was not impressed. Aster tricked him. The platinum guy freaked, accusing him of lying and stormed off after threatening to set Aster straight in the mage hall later. Aster just grinned at the whole mess, thinking, perfect. Wasn't in the best mood anyway. Not bad to blow off some steam on this dude. After that, he asked Alfredo if he can meet the madam right now. The next day, bright and early, Aster walked into Bianca's office, looking to talk business. He was polite but direct. He told Bianca he would enroll in the academy. Bianca was pleasantly surprised he decided so fast and said she'd start getting things ready right away. Alfredo, meanwhile, rushed in after Aster walked out, all pumped up, saying he was over the moon about the decision, going on about the flames in Aster's eyes, and even daydreaming about becoming his magical sponsor whenever tuition became a problem. Dude was fully extra, imagining himself as a golden angel raining money. Bianca just told him to please quiet down and finally sent him away to the kitchen so she could chill for a minute. She reflected that Alfredo's pure, goofy optimism came from his own backstory. He got roped in the same way by the last head butler too. She just shook her head, kind of feeling bad for the guy. Damn, now I respect you, Alfredo. Later, Aster headed out to the mage hall. This was where the platinum blonde dude from last night told him to go. On his way in, a hooded figure stopped him, all mysterious with a candle. When that spooky man asked why Aster came there, he was confused because he didn't even know the name of the platinum-haired guy. After explaining, the hooded man told Aster to come in. He was expecting him to come here. Aster stepped inside a big door, and a tornado of magic cards came whirling at him. At the center was a young guy with platinum hair, the one running things here. Aster realized he must be dealing with some magic nutcase. The platinum-haired dude introduced himself as Wenji von Blander, asking if Aster had come to see his little brother. Aster was surprised. This platinum-haired family is all insane.
Suddenly, Aster's brain just hit rewind. He started thinking about his old job as a troubleshooter, sneaking into all sorts of magic schools. He remembered one really funny thing about the research mages. He liked to call these people the pen pushers. He noticed most of them had thinning hair. He thought the stress made them pull their hair so much that it just stopped growing. He had actually made a whole list in his mind, splitting these sad hair situations into 4 levels. At level 1, the mage tried to act chill by hiding their head under their hood. Level 2 was when they just gave up and let their thin hair show, like, yeah, I'm balding, so what? Then there was level 3, where they just shaved it all off. But level 4? That was when the mage just went off the rails and started looking for magic to fix their baldness, even though nobody ever made it work. Sounds desperate, right? But man, Wenji was nothing like those pen pushers. He came in, looking young with thick hair, none of that old, stressed vibe. Wenjithan started things by saying sorry for his little bro acting too wild. He said he never thought his brother would disrespect a guest of the head of the family. As Aster listened, he totally noticed that thick hair. This dude was special. Wenji poured him some tea and told him he worked at a magic academy. Not just that, he was the vice principal. Aster was instantly impressed, because families like the Blander never gave jobs like that just to rich kids. Wenji had to have some real magic skills. Wenjithan told Aster that he was different from all the usual weirdos in the gray zone. That made Aster laugh, but inside, he actually felt kind of uncomfortable. He secretly wished Wenji would just act mean, because that would make things easier. Instead, he was all smiles, and our boy could feel that weird chemistry, like, nope, these two were never going to be buddies. Then, Wenji congratulated Aster for getting invited to Xenian Academy. Aster said thanks, and he started talking about how awesome the academy was, bragging that he graduated from the 145th class. Our boy wondered if Wenji was trying to act like his old school friend or something. That guy must have noticed, because he apologized right away and said he got a little too excited and maybe babbled too much. Then, he said they should get to the real reason for their meeting. Aster thought, what was this main point, bro? Wenji said there was something he had to check first. Then he dropped a total bomb on Aster by asking if he would risk his life for a friend. He explained that the Blander family's whole future was on the line. Then he brought out a glowing book, saying if Aster was ready to put it all on the line, he would give Aster the book. It was insane. Aster was shocked out of his mind. This wasn't just any book, it was the Blander family's main secret, the Book of Healing Light. Switch over to the fancy palace garden. Lady Bianca was chilling there, messing around with yellow flowers. She let out a big sigh because Damien's school problem was finally gone. It used to give her a headache, but now she felt so much better. She started to think about Aster, who she thought was a real good friend for Damien. She knew he was super talented. He could be blunt, and maybe a little rude, at least, that's what Alfredo said. But hey, Bianca thought that was normal for a guy his age. She liked him most because he was always steady and never faked compliments. He stayed the same even after learning about Damien's fancy background. But she also figured he was the type of person who would never belong anywhere, like a wild bird you just can't put in a cage. Bianca was determined, though. She thought there were a ton of ways to keep talented people close, and she would figure it out because she was not giving up on Aster. Then, slam! We're back in the magic hall with Aster. He was still totally frozen from Wenji's crazy offer. Our MC tried to figure out why that man would suddenly trust him with the family's best secret. He stared at Wenji's eyes, but man, it was like looking into clear water, no hint at what he was feeling. Aster thought that you could always read emotions in someone's eyes, whether good or bad, but not with Wenji. This guy was like a pro assassin, emotionless. Aster guessed Wenji had worn that mask for so long. Maybe not even himself knew who he really was. Wenji then told Aster not to give an answer too quickly, especially just because he wanted the reward. He said this was super serious business, nothing to joke about. Aster decided to answer anyway. He said he'd listen to what Wenji had to say and that if he could do it, he would, but if he couldn't, he wouldn't bother. When Wenji heard that, he got angry. He He asked Aster if he would listen, even if it could get him killed just for knowing the secret. He even said that if Aster listened and then refused, he might have to kill him. Aster looked right back at Wenji and said, "Go ahead, try to kill him." Yeah, his face is so damn scary right now. He even joked inside his head, wondering if a man could die twice, but then, oh snap, he remembered that, for him, it was actually possible. Suddenly, Wenji let loose his power, trying to scare Aster with a crazy strong magic aura. He wanted to make our boy back down, but guess what? Aster stood there like a boss, totally chill, not scared at all. Wenji saw this, stopped, and actually smiled. He said that Aster passed his test, and that now he would be honest and talk more openly. He explained that he really needed someone outside of his own Blander family to trust for this job. He started to spill the tea about his reasons. At first, he had thought all vagrants from the gray zone were the same, just a bunch of nobodies. He worried that Damien, being young, might not have the best sense of people and might choose to be friends with Aster. But what made him curious was how Damien's mom, Lady Bianca, who loved him more than anything, let someone like Aster stay close. He figured there had to be something super special about this dude. Then, by pure luck, the fight between Aster and his little brother happened, and he found the perfect reason to call Aster in for this secret talk. Aster asked if it was really necessary for the vice principal of a magic academy to act like this and use his brother just as an excuse. Wenji said that Aster was actually right. Things were messy, and he couldn't just go straight to Aster on his own. He also made it clear that it wasn't some dumb family power battle, because the Blander family relationship is good. Then he revealed the real kicker. The Declan family was spying on him. When Aster asked why, Wenji got really honest. He said, since our boy didn't care much about danger and death, he might as well tell the whole story. He told Aster that he was busy researching a secret Declan family magic called the Celestial Source Technique. And apparently, the Declans had found out. He even managed to get this secret spell in a sneaky way. Well, it makes sense. Blander was probably investigating to beat Declans, of course. They would be super angry about that. Wenji said the Declans acted kind of wild, as expected. Even if he was only looking for a weakness in their secret, Declan still wanted to kill him, even though he was the vice principal. But this was even crazier. At first, Wenji just wanted to find a weak point, but when he poked around, he found a way to make the whole Declan's magic, which is already perfect, even better, to a whole different level. He said he couldn't stop this research now, and figured Aster would totally understand this magic obsession. Aster just sat back and thought, dude, this guy in front of him was not just a little crazy, he was absolutely insane. How could he mess with that kind of secret right here in his own backyard? Then, everything clicked in Aster's mind. He remembered stuff from his last life. The reason the Declans destroyed the Blander family in secret was Wenji's research. That was the big reason. Farron from the Declan family saw this powerful new version of the magic and decided to wipe them out just to get it for himself. That magic was why Farron was so insanely strong in his last fight before he died and regressed. Wenji noticed that Aster was so quiet. He asked if Aster regretted hearing all this now, since the story was just too big to handle. But Aster wasn't worried about that. He wanted to know why. In all this mess, Wenji looked for him. Wenji explained that his own family didn't know about his project. He also suspected there was a spy among the Blander, but he couldn't figure out who it was. Our boy said that maybe the Declans are actually the ones who deliberately leaked their magic, trying to catch him. Wenji just started laughing and said he figured that out too. So, to mess with the Declans, he spread a bit of the supplementary formula back at them, since he definitely didn't want to die. Aster wondered why he just didn't flip sides and join the Declans. He figured they'd welcome a genius like him. Wenji gave a mysterious answer, just saying he had his own reasons. Then he told Aster that because our boy wasn't tied to the Blander family, he needed him to do something for him. The research was a team effort, but Wenji was stuck. He wanted Aster to take his research paper to Professor Baron at Xenian Academy. If Aster did that, he'd get paid well, plus he would give him the healing light spell. Aster thought this was actually a pretty sweet deal, but decided to push it even harder. He said he wanted to take the healing light spell now, and when the brand new version of the celestial source magic from Declans was done, he wanted that too. He said that this way, they would be stuck together as true partners, either all in or all out. Hearing that, Wenji laughed and said Aster was really bold, but also pretty straightforward. Of course, if the deal wasn't good, Aster just wouldn't do it. Wenji thought about it for a second, then agreed. He said the name of the new magic from Declans didn't matter, and right now, Aster couldn't use it anyway because he didn't know the basics yet, but promised to give it to him when it was ready. But he also wanted something. He told RMC that until the project was totally finished, he might ask for help again. As Wenji handed over the research papers, Aster made a joke, pretending he wouldn't give it to the professor. Wenji just froze for a second, then looked annoyed when Aster admitted he was just messing with him. Aster basically said no problem, as long as it was about the research. Wenji complained that Aster was rude and boring. Suddenly, Aster wanted to know about Professor Baron and if this guy could be trusted with secret magic stuff. Wenji just laughed and said that he and Baron were always stuck in second place and first place battles back at school, even after they became assistant professors. He sighed and said that ended when he came back to the Blander family, but he was always just a little ahead of Baron. Aster thought life was rough, because now he knew there was another mad professor in the school. Later, back in his room, our protagonist was busy packing stuff into his magic pouch. Damien popped in and reminded him not to get caught with anything weird. Then Aster noticed a letter with a red wax seal sitting on top of a pile of books. He opened it up and saw it was for him, starting off with, "To my dear Aster." Aster rolled his eyes at that dear part. The letter was from Wenji. He said these books were magical texts. Aster needed to learn to have the brains for his new status. Wenji also included a strict reading order and signed it with, "From your friend, Wenji von Blander." Aster stared at all those books and the detailed letter, thinking it was an amazing gift. He couldn't help but admit that Wenji was a true genius for putting together a magic path that went from super simple to crazy advanced. But our boy also thought that man was kind of a madman. He smiled and thought, not bad. Then Aster got out his notebook and started making a list of sponsors for the magic tower he planned to build in the future. The first sponsor name? Wenji von Blander. He checked the pile of books, 132 of them. That didn't even count the healing spell and the research thesis. He thought about putting the healing light spell in public at his tower one day, but he knew he needed to talk with Damien about it first. He remembered the day when Damien hugged a cat and called Aster, "my friend." Thinking about it made Aster smile and feel that true friendship was something special. But his mind went straight back to those 132 books. He realized they weren't just a bunch of random books, they were a full set, a whole category of magic knowledge. With this collection, anyone could build up their magic skills from the basics. Suddenly, Aster's plans changed. He used to want to collect books and just hoard them in his tower. Now he saw that the books would make his tower famous as a place open to everyone who wanted to learn. Bro, Aster's dream is so pure. We need to protect it from Declan Bastard. Somewhere else, Wenji was thinking about the meeting too. He was pretty pleased, because things had turned out way better than he expected. He originally wanted to have Aster deliver the research to the professor if he was useful and ditch him if not. But now, he thought Aster was an interesting guy. He remembered how Aster looked him in the eye when he threatened him. Aster wasn't faking. He really did not care about dying. Wenji thought that most people were boring and fake, but this made Aster different and kind of cool. Also, he could tell that Aster had a lot of secrets, which just made it more fun. For the first time, he found someone who really thought in the same way and wanted the same things, a feeling he'd never had before. A couple of days passed, and it was finally the big day. Aster was getting ready to leave for the academy. A maid let him know that when he arrived, he'd just have to fill out some easy paperwork. Both Damien and Aster didn't even have to take the entrance tests. The maid also said that Aster looked great in the new school uniform. Aster thanked her, thought being from a famous family had some nice perks. He waived the test entrance. He thought to himself again, yes, money is too op. At the carriage, Damien and Lady Bianca were waiting. Damien shouted for Aster to hurry up. Before leaving, Lady Bianca wished Aster well, told him to take care, and hoped he'd get everything he wanted from this new start. Aster thanked her warmly and smiled. As the carriage rolled away, Aster repeated those words in his head. What I want. He decided he was totally going to get what he wanted. He thought about Xenian Academy, the best school on the Eastern continent, packed with future sponsors, and he planned to collect them all. He gave a confident smile and thought, just you wait, colleagues, here I come. During the carriage ride, Aster read all the books from Wenji. He was blown away by how smart Wenji was. Our boy realized that even though the rules of magic were simple, everyone saw them a little differently. Like water. Some people saw it as life, others as disaster. It all depended on your point of view. Every magic family had picked their own unique path, based on how they looked at that one basic idea. By the time he finished the books, Aster discovered something huge. Wenji had set up his lessons to match the super-secret roots of Declan family magic. Suddenly, Damien called Aster, "my friend," and pointed out the window. They had arrived. Xenian Academy was right outside. The maid told them this was as far as the carriage could go. There was a tradition. Every new student, no matter how rich or famous, had to walk into the academy on foot. She wished them good luck and lots of wisdom, and then she left. Damien was pumped. He grabbed Aster's arm and told him to hurry up. He said the maid mentioned if they were late for the big entrance event, they might lose their seats. Our protagonist thought the whole thing was kind of silly. He knew an entrance ceremony wasn't like some village play where the early birds get the best seats. But then he guessed that Lancy, the maid, probably said that just to make sure Damien didn't mess around and be late. So, he just let it slide and moved on. When they walked into the big entrance hall, it was packed with new students everywhere. Damien's eyes went wide with excitement. He said he was amazed at how many people there were and told Aster that Lancy was right. They would have missed getting a seat if they came later. But Aster knew the truth. He checked their official seat numbers on a tiny slip of paper, Class M3, seats 11 and 12. Still, Damien pointed at some empty seats, looking worried and asking if they could just grab those before someone else took them. But Aster told him to chill out and wait. Then he looked at Damien and thought it was funny. This was the same guy who didn't even want to come to the academy, and now he was pumped up like a little kid. Suddenly, as Damien moved forward, he bumped into a big student with long gray hair who looked seriously grumpy. The guy glared at Damien and demanded to know what his problem was. Aster quickly helped Damien up and checked if he was hurt. Damien just laughed from the floor and said he was fine, not hurt at all. He apologized, completely cheerful, and admitted he wasn't paying attention. Aster grabbed Damien, ready to move on, but the gray-haired guy suddenly snapped and stopped them. He barked at Damien, pointing out that something got onto his clothes. Our boy stayed calm and sized up the angry student. Just from the guy's vibe, he could tell he was probably from a big, noble family. He guessed Damien would act all polite and clean the guy's clothes himself, which is exactly what happened. Damien started scrubbing at the clothes, apologizing like crazy and even promising they'd shine brighter than before. But the other student was getting madder and madder. Aster felt like this was going to turn into a fight no matter what. The gray-haired guy lost it completely and tried to punch Damien, shouting for him to get out of his sight. But just when things were about to go bad, Aster stepped in. He grabbed the student's fist and told him it was a mistake to keep pushing things. The noble guy demanded to know who Aster even was. Aster stood tall and made it clear he was Damien's friend. The other student sneered and said Aster must be pretty loyal if he was willing to take a beating for a friend, and told him he'd regret it. Our MC sighed inside, realizing that his plan to make friendly connections on day one was already ruined. He decided to give up on making friends for now. This guy just wanted to fight, and nothing else would work. Everybody in the crowd started to pay attention. The room filled up with students, and people started whispering and guessing who would win. Most students seemed to think the big guy from the Dolanvi family, they called him Hexter, was going to wipe the floor with Aster. Then, a student who seemed to have some rank pushed his way into the crowd. He scolded everyone for just standing around, but when someone asked if they should break things up, he said no. He even told the gray-haired mage to throw up a magic barrier so the fight could go wild without interruptions. People quickly turned the scuffle into a cool event and started making bets, cheering on Hexter from the Dolanvi family. Hexter stepped into the spotlight and introduced himself as the second son of the proud Dolanvi family. He asked Aster for his name, but Aster brushed him off, saying he was just a random drifter, nothing fancy. Hexter was cocky and said that being a nobody didn't matter, but he joked the small dueling space put mages at a disadvantage. Then, in a show of generosity, he told Aster to go first. Aster almost wanted to laugh at how dramatic Hexter was. He said Hexter had a big mouth for someone who hated talking and teased him by asking if he was scared. That pushed Hexter over the edge, and he charged at Aster, swinging his fist in a fast punch. Aster noticed that the crowd only talked about Hexter being strong, but actually, there were two dangerous people. Aster himself was no joke. Hexter believed he could handle any punch from a magic student, but once Aster's fist hit him, he was totally shocked. The punch was way heavier than he expected. Hexter even called Aster a scoundrel, shocked by his strength. While Hexter was reeling, something even weirder happened. He felt a burst of healing magic. He looked around, completely confused, and saw that Damien was the one healing him. Hexter didn't get why Damien would help heal his friend's enemy in the middle of the fight. Aster shook his head and muttered about how weird noble families were. He saw his chance and punched Hexter again, telling him off for losing focus. Hexter was caught in a straight-up nightmare. Aster was hitting him with crazy strength, and Damien was laughing loud and healing him at the same time. His heart almost exploded from the madness. He called both of them crazy in his mind and just wished someone would knock him out so this fight would end. Hexter started wondering if he was actually scared now. Meanwhile, the crowd was getting hyped. They yelled at Hexter to toughen up and reminded him he was the pride of the Dolanvi family, the new star, the hope of the continent's martial arts. They wanted him to end the fight fast and not drag things on. Aster's first day at school was already turning totally insane. and he hadn't even made it to his assigned seat yet. Faced with all those insults from the crowd, Hexter just lost it. He totally blew up, yelling about how he couldn't believe a simple mage like Aster was looking down on him. He went for another punch, but Aster dodged it easy. Then Hexter went all out, charging up every bit of power he had, and it ended in a deafening explosion right there in the hall. The crowd got super hyped, saying this was finally the Hexter they expected. Hexter felt his fist make contact and thought he'd done it, but something was off. Why did it feel like his punch was barely hitting anything? Suddenly, Aster flew through the air from the attack, but he landed like it was no big deal, just dusted off his clothes and stood up calmly. Hexter was freaking out. He screamed in rage and rushed Aster again. Aster, chill as always, watched. He noticed Damien was actually still healing Hexter during the fight. Our boy realized that if he wanted this over, he needed one super knockout punch. He decided to use a special move he invented with his old crew back in the day. This was not really magic or martial arts. It was something new that used the energy when mana particles crashed together. He called it the collision style. So, Aster fired off his special attack, sending out a huge blue flash that shocked everyone in the place. People stood with their jaws dropped, eyes wide at the crazy energy exploding in front of them. Thick dust filled the air so nobody could even see who had won yet. After a minute, Aster put up his hands and said he was the winner, then shouted, "Cheers!" and hyped up the crowd, telling them to get louder. The students exploded with cheers, excitement, and even more yelling. Suddenly, everyone who had bet on Aster started jumping up and down, celebrating their big win. Damien zoomed over, pumped up, and yelled, saying they did it. Aster just answered coolly with a yes. But inside, he thought these kids were too easy to impress. Away from the main group, some fancy noble students watched the whole thing, sneering. They complained that mages who fought like that were acting super low class and said the scene was vulgar. Then, crap, an academy official stomped into the crowd, raging and demanding to know who had started a fight at the entrance ceremony. He barked at the students to clear out, threatening to drag them all out if they didn't move fast. Aster realized this was a brand new mess, but honestly, he wasn't that worried. He always had ways to get out of a jam, and besides, everybody in the hall had had a good time. Before Aster could slip away, Damien surprised him by stepping forward. Damien grabbed Aster and told everybody that it wasn't the other students, but him and Aster who started the fight. He pointed straight at both of them to make sure the official knew. The official turned to glare at them, and Damien made it even clearer, confirming in a loud voice that they were the ones who did it. Meanwhile, Hexter lay sprawled on the floor, totally knocked out. Bro, why is Damien so stupid? I always laughed because of him. Next thing they knew, Aster and Damien were marched off to a stern office to face the professor. The academy official there looked super grumpy and asked if they wanted to confess to starting the fight with no lies or excuses. Damien and Aster just nodded and admitted to everything. Maybe the honesty worked, or maybe it was the fact that Hexter wasn't really hurt, but the official just decided to let them go this one time. But he made a point of warning them that he'd be watching every move they made for the rest of their school life. Once outside, our protagonist took a breath and finally relaxed. They still hadn't missed the entrance ceremony. When they got back to the big hall, all eyes were suddenly on them. Students whispered, trying to figure out how this skinny newcomer could actually beat a martial arts champ like Hexter, and how any mage could fight like that. Damien loved every bit of the attention and started waving at people, acting like a superstar. Aster, though, just wanted some peace. He calmly told Damien to cut it out and not make things worse. He looked around and spotted their proper seats, then pointed so Damien would notice them. Damien was thrilled. He thought their classmates had even saved them seats. He really believed that having good friends was the best treasure in the world, and for once, Aster almost agreed, giving him a tiny, reluctant smile. Then, the ceremony finally started. The school headmaster came on stage and gave a speech that seemed to last forever. Aster was honestly impressed by how the old man could keep talking non-stop without getting even a little bored. Damien, though, started nodding off and drooling all over his shoulder. Our boy looked annoyed, but he fixed Damien's clothes, then wiped his mouth so no one would see. Bro, our MC is really like a big brother. Suddenly, the headmaster got interrupted. An assistant came up and whispered about something super important. The headmaster stopped his endless speech and wondered what could be so serious. But after hearing the news, he apologized to the students, said he was needed right now, and hurried off the stage, looking pretty worried. After the headmaster left the stage really fast, a woman with crazy orange hair came out. She was super cool and had everyone's attention right away with her scream. Nobody made a sound. Everybody just stared at her because she looked strong and important. Honestly, almost a bit scary. She told everyone that her name was Jira. She also said that she was going to handle the rest of the entrance ceremony because something weird happened, and the headmaster had to leave early. Jira said that it was time for the new student oath. She called for the magic department's representative, a younger girl named Dahlia Dawn, to come on stage. As soon as the crowd heard the name Dawn, all the students started whispering like crazy. The students could not believe that a girl from the famous Dawn family had even taken the entrance exam with regular people. Some students wondered if she was weak, but another kid, who seemed to know more, explained that Dahlia was the third daughter of the Dawn family boss. He said that there was no way the super famous Dawn family would let her take the test if she wasn't super strong. Aster saw Dahlia and knew her right away. He started thinking about her and her powerful family. If the Declan family was the magic king in the east, then the Dawn family was right behind them, almost as strong. Dahlia was the pride of her family, and everyone believed she would be their future hero. He remembered that Dahlia indeed was really strong. She had even helped him a lot before, after he quit his job as a troubleshooter. He thought their friendship was special. They were never like a victim and a hero, but more like a cool partner duo with secrets and plans together. Aster felt happy to see her joining as a new student, just like he did. Then, Jira called the martial arts department's top student to the stage. His name was Pola. Aster noticed that Jira didn't say any family name for Pola. That meant that Pola must not be from a rich or famous family. Because of this, he believed that some rich family kids must be super angry and jealous of Pola. After the new students finished their oath, Jira told everyone it was done. The ceremony part was over. But she said they still had to meet their professors, so she asked the teachers to come up one by one. While this was happening, Aster realized that Dahlia was looking at him in a mysterious way. He wondered if she was thinking about their old memories together. But nah, she won't even remember their past from the previous life, so he told himself not to worry about it for now. Suddenly, something funny happened. Dahlia tripped and fell in a very awkward way in front of everyone. People tried not to laugh, but some students did anyway. The professors then went on stage and introduced themselves one after another. Each one looked pretty important. Aster saw one professor he knew. It was Professor Baron, who Wenji had once told him about. He was confused about why Baron was so late. Baron went up and said he would be teaching the basics of magic. Aster was surprised because he had imagined Baron would have a similar vibe just like Wenji, but Baron turned out to be really different. He was pretty cold and calm. Then he reminded himself that Wenji was always acting in public. He thought, wow, you can't really know people by just looking at them once. Jira then finished the professor introductions and said the whole entrance ceremony was officially over. She told everyone to follow their group leaders to the student dorm. Aster looked over at Damien, who was sleeping like a log again. Of course, he woke Damien up and Damien was shocked. He said he was surprised that the ceremony finished so fast. Aster could not help himself, so he joked and told Damien that he got caught sleeping and now he was expelled from the school and needed to go home. Damien freaked out, started yelling and crying like a little kid, and totally believed the joke. Dude, he was so dramatic. Aster went to his dorm room next, still laughing about Damien. His room was on the top floor, and wow, it had an awesome view. Inside, the room looked super clean and nice. It was even better than he expected. There were basic things on the desk, so Aster guessed the school gave these kits to everyone to keep things fair. That way nobody could guess if a student was rich or poor just by looking at their stuff. He thought maybe students could bring their own things later. Then he saw his roommate. Of course, as cliché as any typical manhwa, it was Pola, the martial arts guy from before. Well, Pola did not look happy to see Aster at all. In fact, his face was super serious. He told our protagonist in a cold way that he did not care what Aster did, but bro, he had one rule, don't bother him, and he promised not to bother Aster. That even meant no talking. He made sure Aster understood, and his voice was a bit scary. Our boy just stared at him. He wanted to laugh at how strict and grumpy that big guy looked and thought, wow, what an arrogant guy. Pola got angry that Aster did not say anything back. He demanded to know why Aster was silent. At that moment, Aster thought Pola must be the best fighter at the school, but he wondered why he looked so tense. He got a weird idea and wanted to test himself. Suddenly, without warning, he jumped at Pola, fast and sharp. Pola instantly whipped out his sword. Well, our boy secretly watched Pola as he moved with his sword, and though he wasn't bad, the reaction speed is good. Even in a small, crowded room, Pola managed not to hit anything or make a mess. Aster admitted to himself that Pola's fighting level was pretty high. But right in the middle of all this tension, Damien showed up at the door. He just shouted for Aster to come out right now. Aster was just like, whatever, and said he would do anything he wanted to do in his own room and left him alone. Outside, Damien waited for Aster and called him his friend, really loud and excited, like always. He wanted to know who Aster's roommate was. Aster answered it was Pola. Damien was so surprised by that, but Aster explained that Damien wouldn't know the guy anyway, since he had slept through most of the ceremony. Damien didn't care, and just wanted them to go explore the academy together. He said Lancey told him there were lots of cool places to see, and she made him promise to take Aster out for a big tour on their first day. Aster agreed. He thought it sounded useful so they wouldn't get super lost later. But just then, Aster felt this weird little tingle, a feeling deep inside that he hadn't had in a while. It was his old troubleshooter sense. Dude, he could tell that there were Deculian troubleshooters around, those sneaky, scary assassins called running demons. He decided this tour would be a good way to scout out how many were hiding at the academy, so he hurried Damien to start wandering the grounds with him, trying to act excited. Damien ran around with wide eyes like a little kid. He kept calling everything amazing and beautiful, especially when he spotted this huge, shiny blue lake. He said his home was in the desert, so he had never seen any lake like this before. Aster felt a bit tired, kind of like he was babysitting instead of hanging with a friend. He could just tell Lancey set this whole thing up on purpose, to make Damien busy so he won't annoy that maid. Aster decided he would get her back someday for this trick. He joked with Damien, saying maybe they should ask the school to build Damien his own private lake. Damien totally bought it. He wanted a lake bigger than the big one they saw. When Aster said he'd just need to dig a big hole and fill it with water, Damien got hyped and started dreaming about how awesome his own lake would be. Aster asked what the lake should be called, and Damien said blood, sweat, and tears. That name made Aster almost die laughing, dude. What a weird choice. Wow, that was a BTS song. Some girl here probably knows it. Anyway, when Damien saw a cool, fancy-looking statue, Aster repeated his joke and said maybe Damien should have a statue too. Damien cheered up even more when he spotted a beautiful dragon statue. And somewhere far away, Lancey shivered, not knowing why. Maybe she just knew our boy was messing around with Damien again. After that, Aster decided the tour was over, and they should go back to the dorms. While they walked back, our protagonist was secretly counting the troubleshooter he spotted hiding around. He counted 7 so far, but guessed there were about 10 of those shadowy assassin dudes in total, all sneaking around the academy. He figured out that their main headquarters was in the second magic hall. That was also where Professor Barron's office was. Now, Aster was sure their real target was Professor Barron. He thought it all through and realized the Declan family must have figured out that Wenji had someone helping him. Now they were keeping tabs on Barron because he was one of Wenji's only friends. He actually saw one troubleshooter peeking at them from behind some bushes. But he noticed the troubleshooter was not watching him. They were focused on their real target, the professor. Yeah, they were probably looking out for any outsiders who came to see that professor. Aster grinned to himself and made up his mind. Tonight, he would find out just how much these goons really knew about Wenji's plans. That night, when everything was dark and quiet, one of the troubleshooters moved secretly to an academy building. Inside, 2 masked troubleshooters met up in the shadows. One asked where the team was. The other replied they had already gone ahead to the main spot. The first troubleshooter said they got an order from the bosses to gather at the target's nest. When the second troubleshooter asked if it was the primary or secondary target, the first one said it was for the secondary target. He explained that they had strong info that something valuable would be given to the secondary target at midnight. He also reported that Wenji, the primary target, had finally left his hiding place. The troubleshooters figured out that Professor Barron was their specific target for tonight. The second troubleshooter started to panic. He whined that without help from the single digits, the best assassins, they were just toast against the super strong professors around here. He kept saying they needed number 1, 2, or 3. But his partner broke the bad news. Bro, none of the elites were coming this time. But then he dropped a bombshell. Someone called Callahan, the legendary fire demon, would join their mission tonight. The troubleshooters was shocked. Callahan was famous. He was the vice captain of the Crimson Jewel Mage Corps in the Declan family, and everyone knew he was crazy powerful. The troubleshooters also realized Callahan would destroy anything or anyone to finish his job. So, that meant the commanders expected the whole team to be ready to die if needed. Pretty insane, right? The first man tried to calm his buddy down, saying maybe there wouldn't be a big fight since using a famous guy like Callahan for a secret job was super risky for the Declan family. Still, both troubleshooters agreed they needed to hurry up and join the rest of their team. Maybe if they moved fast, their chances of not dying would go up, even if just a little. So off they went. Meanwhile, Aster was chilling on his balcony, secretly watching everything. And he started thinking about what he heard. There was that name, Callahan. And the important time? Midnight. Aster remembered Callahan from his old life. Even back then, Callahan was a legend. After the Declan family almost destroyed itself fighting the Blander family, Callahan kept fighting and being loyal, even when everything fell apart. His biggest fame actually came after that war. People called him the Fire Demon of Declan. Aster thought, wow, facing someone that strong was super risky, but if he could get even a tiny secret of Callahan's ancient flame magic, it would be worth it. He suddenly realized why the troubleshooter he had tailed earlier had left in a hurry. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, and there was no way he would let it slip by. But then Aster started wondering about the real plan. The thing all these people wanted was a thesis, a special, magical research paper. But, dude, the copy of the thesis they wanted was with him, and he was pretty sure it was the real one. So, if some fake thesis was being delivered tonight, then all of this was just a huge trap. Later that night, while Aster was pretending to be in a deep sleep, Pola began to get ready in secret. He put on all black clothes and packed his gear. He quietly checked that Aster was still asleep, then slipped out the door without a sound. But bro, that Aster he saw was just a fucking doll. Meanwhile, in a dark office somewhere in the academy, Professor Barron was busy with piles of paperwork. Suddenly, he felt something was off. He got mad right away. He hated it when the Declan goons messed with him. Before, he could ignore them if they only spied from far away, but now, no way. They were crossing the line. Barron suddenly noticed someone sneaking into his office. It was a masked figure opening the door, thinking he was super slick. Barron laughed to himself because he could feel the sneaky energy, and he totally recognized who it was. The intruder was shocked when Barron called him out, but Barron knew it was Pola. Barron told Pola he needed to learn how to hide his energy better if he wanted to be a real ninja. This was like basic baby stuff when it came to breaking into places. Pola suddenly gave him an envelope. What is this? He then figured out Wenji was involved and tried to guess what crazy scheme he had cooked up this time. Why did that fucker deliberately give him this fake-ass document? But he knew better than to think Wenji was just some idiot walking into a trap. There was always a bigger plan with that guy. Suddenly, boom! The wall exploded in a huge ball of fire. The entire wall was blasted away, and a tall man with long red hair stepped through the hole. Dude, Callahan had just arrived, and he was smiling like this was all a big party. He told Barron his name but joked that a boring professor like him probably never heard it. Pola was totally freaking out. Callahan looked at him and said that his sword made him look like a cheap hire. But Barron just cut him off and said he had never heard of him, not even a little bit. Barron was so chill and rude with Callahan that Callahan was actually surprised. Barron told him to stop playing around and talk seriously. He even said that Callahan's gross smell was enough to make his nose rot. Nobody ever talked to Callahan like that, so he just started laughing. But after he stopped laughing, he got serious. He pointed at Pola and announced that Pola was going to die tonight. And for Barron, maybe he would do him a favor and only leave him with one eye and one arm. Yikes. The battle started fast. No time for trash talk. That trash Callahan is blowing them with a giant fire magic. Barron released a giant wave of ice energy and blocked it. The explosion was massive. It shook the entire building, just total chaos. Pola was shocked at how big and strong the blast was. Yet Barron told him straight up that from now on, he was not a student tonight, but just a mercenary who had to fight for his own life. Pola agreed, gripping his sword, ready to fight until the end. Barron started wondering why no alarms had gone off in the academy after such a loud explosion. He realized the Declan troubleshooter must have cast some kind of magic field to hide all the noise so no one would come running. He was not sure now if he could actually trust Pola to help in this battle or if he was just going to get in the way. But there wasn't any time to chat or worry now. The real fight had just begun. On the other side of the room, Callahan saw an envelope on the floor. It smelled disgusting to him. He said it stank like the filthy blander. And he saw that Barron wasn't going to hand over what he wanted without a fight. So Callahan got this wicked grin and decided to make things fun. He blasted out a gigantic fire attack and filled the whole room with burning flames. Barron felt the fight getting out of control. When he looked over his shoulder, he saw a whole squad of troubleshooters running at the building. The battle just went totally crazy. Callahan's fire was everywhere. Barron and Pola were fighting with all they had. And guess what? Nearby, Aster was hiding in the shadows, watching everything. He thought things were finally getting spicy. He put on his mask and pulled up his hood. He remembered it had been a long time since he acted as troubleshooter number 1, not just Aster the student. He looked at the far-off explosions and knew it was finally his turn to join the madness. Aster jokingly prayed to the moon goddess to make him a good troubleshooter for once, but then admitted to himself that he was never a good guy any day of his life. He then bolted toward the wild battle as fast as he could go. Inside, Callahan was fighting and making fun of Pola, saying that even though nobody knew who he was, Pola was actually holding up surprisingly well. Pola could barely breathe. He was only alive because of a protection amulet his captain gave him. He grumbled to himself that the thing was the only reason he hadn't fried already. Baron quickly told Pola to get back and let him handle it. He then told Pola he wasn't bad, maybe he could trust him a bit more than before. Baron saw Pola's sword glowing and asked if he was using magic to make it stronger. He also asked Pola if he thought he could stop more of Callahan's fire. Pola answered with serious, stubborn energy. He said he would block as many as he needed, because this was now about living or dying. There wasn't any other choice. Callahan liked the challenge. He said a team with a mage and a guard was actually powerful and made things interesting. Then, he sent a super strong fire attack straight at Pola, but Pola blocked it, showing he was braver than anyone expected. The fight stayed back and forth, Pola defending, Baron attacking and defending at the same time, while the troubleshooter tried their best to push in. But Baron realized defending forever was useless. They would lose if nothing changed. So Baron made a risky move. He told Callahan that when mana in nature is limited and two people give opposite attributes, then a huge battle happens to see who wins control. He challenged Callahan face to face to see how much power each of them could take from the other. Callahan got super excited. He laughed and accepted the direct battle. Both let their magic powers clash. Blue and red energy crashing together in a gigantic explosion that blew up everything around them. It was nuts. Pola was standing way back by now, trying not to fall over or give up. He thought, man, both these guys are real monsters. There was no way he could do anything to change the fight. He wished they would just beat each other up and finish already. The troubleshooters who were watching all this were totally stressed out. Their leader warned everyone not to get closer, saying it would be suicide for anyone to jump in now. He told them to just breathe and wait for their chance. But suddenly, a troubleshooter got attacked from out of nowhere. Bam! An assassin was among them. Another troubleshooter shouted for a warning. An assassin had set a trap. But that assassin was none other than Aster, moving so fast it was like he was part lightning. He knocked out the troubleshooter and raced straight into the battle zone between Baron and Callahan. Baron and Callahan were busy with their power struggle when Aster suddenly showed up with a quiet but scary presence. Both of them were shocked. Where did this mystery guy come from? Callahan got really angry, but Aster came right at him, fast and confident. He hit Callahan hard, telling him this was his last night alive, like in a scary movie. Callahan's defense got pierced, and for the first time, he knew he'd die if he didn't react quickly. He threw out a giant fire spell to push Aster away, then fell back, coughing up lots of blood because of mana backflow. But Aster just walked out of the fire, still fine, with not even a scratch. He charged at Callahan again, and Callahan realized something freaky. His own magical energy started to turn against him, out of control. The other troubleshooter saw their chance and ran to stop Aster, desperate to help Callahan. Callahan quickly drank a special potion to keep his energy from going wild, but he was shocked at the level of skill Aster showed. Even while hurting, Callahan was weirdly impressed at how Aster moved. Every spell and every attack was perfect and clean. He couldn't believe he was actually admiring the stranger, even while nearly dying. But that bastard quickly shook off that feeling. He used his huge anger and pulled out massive, glowing red magic circles. He yelled that he didn't know who Aster was, but he promised to make him pay for interfering. He sent a monster fire attack at Aster. The blast was so huge, it even roasted the unlucky troubleshooter in the way. Aster was in the middle of it all, standing tall, face hidden by his mask, while everything around got swallowed up by savage, burning flames. Whoa! Talk about chaos! Callahan got super angry. He was ready to destroy the masked man. He thought to himself that he did not care about the other guys who got caught in the fire. The only important thing was to finish the mission. For him, that masked person was just a target that must be eliminated. After burning the place down, Callahan was sweaty but proud. He thought maybe he got his target. He wanted to join the other troubleshooters to take down Professor Baron too. That was his plan. But guess what? Suddenly, a voice came from the smoke. That red hair was shocked. Out of the fire, Aster walked out, looking like he just came from a spa day. Not a scratch anywhere, dude. Our boy thought that Callahan looked crazy on the outside, but he was cold and smart on the inside. He even knew that Callahan was trying to blast him along with the other troubleshooters. He did not look scared at all. He just said that Callahan's ruthless style was the reason he was going to lose. Then, boom, our protagonist picked up his hand. Magic started to glow crazy blue, and he shot a huge energy beam straight at Callahan's head. The shot was so fast that Callahan didn't even get a chance to run. In the end, he dropped to the ground, totally dead. That was game over for him, bro. Later, Aster landed softly next to the body, still in his cool mask and hood hiding his face. He thought that, yeah, Callahan was famous for a reason. If it was any other mage, He would have won easily during his sneak attack, but that red-hair bastard was fast and smart and almost made him lose. Actually, our boy realized that if Callahan had joined with other troubleshooters and gang him, he would have probably lost because his magic power was running low. Aster then kneeled next to Callahan. He guessed that there should be something hidden around there. Sure enough, he found a fancy pouch on Callahan's body. Most battle mages did not trust anyone, so they always carried their secret stuff with them, even magic pockets that only opened for their true owner. But Aster thought he could handle that part later. Suddenly, Professor Baron arrived. His face looked serious, and behind him there were troubleshooters frozen solid like ice cubes. Professor Baron told Aster that he was late because he was busy freezing those troublemakers, but he also wonders if maybe Aster was one of the bad guys too. Aster thought it was funny. He said it was pretty wild, being called a madman and fighting Deculian's bastard in one night. He told the professor that he just killed a guy from House Deculian, so he must thank him first. Hearing that, Professor Baron guessed that Aster must have been sent by Wenji, so he won't touch him. Our boy wonders if the professor really trusted him just because of Wenji. Their bond must be closer than he thought. Anyway, the professor brought up a mercenary who tried to talk to him with a document earlier. Who the fuck was that? A real message or someone to trick Deculian? Aster said maybe the document was actually a fake, and that Wenji was using it as a way to trap some bad guys and see who would react. He remembered that Wenji liked to use tricks like that to get rid of Deculian's influence in the academy. To be sure, Baron wanted the proof if Aster was really the real messenger. Aster then gave him the document, proving that he was legit. Baron looked through the papers and wondered if Aster knew what the content of this paper was. Aster said that, oh, he knew everything. Baron said fine, and that he did not want to lose an ally. He asked if our boy wanted anything else. Aster thought for a moment. He said he wanted books. Yes, books. He explained that he always dreamed about building a big, tall tower full of books so anyone could read them. All he wanted was Baron's magical knowledge to be in those books. Baron thought this sounded weird but also pretty cool. He smiled and agreed, even though he said most people would not understand the books. He said that maybe writing the books would be kind of fun. Aster decided he was about to leave, but Baron stopped him and said they needed a way to talk again for the next message. Our boy thought to himself that he really did not want to get any contact info from another dude, which made him laugh inside a bit. He then pulled out a bracelet made of glowing purple crystal. He explained that this was a magic communication device. If one broke, the other would break too. If he broke just one, Aster would answer the call. If he broke more than one, it meant trouble, and he would show up to help. Professor Baron took the crystal bracelet but still felt a bit weird about the whole thing. He did not really like to get messages from dudes, but hey, that was the job. Aster then walked away into the shadows. The fight was over, but the academy was still a mess. Imperial Knights came to clean up the battlefield and escort students back to their dorms as a precaution against a potential second attack. Of course, Aster took off his mask and blended in perfectly with the crowd, just looking like a normal student. Then Damien appeared, running in his pajamas, looking super sleepy. He asked where Aster had been. He hadn't seen him for a while. He even wondered if Aster had stomach problems and asked if maybe healing magic would help. Honestly, that was just classic Damien, always a bit weird. But Aster was lost in thought. He remembered that with Callahan dead and all the evidence left behind, House Deculian would probably stay quiet for a while. But he was still thinking about that fire scar from the artifact engraved in his body. That thing reacted strangely during the battle. It wasn't normal, but when Aster blocked Callahan's magic, the shield picked up some energy. It protected him really well. Our boy started to wonder if there was an extra magic spell working there, something that only happened in special conditions. Yeah, he decided he needed to look into it more. Then Aster looked at a huge fancy building in front of him, the Lapatelli Library, the biggest library in the East. He thought that maybe he could find some answers in there. Good idea. But suddenly, a student with freckles and a big smile came up to them. He said his name was Chen Bi, and that he was happy to meet Aster. He even said he saw Aster fighting and thought he was really strong. Right away, our protagonist got nervous inside. Did he really see him fight the Deculian? Uh-oh, if he found out who Aster really was, that could be big trouble. Maybe too much trouble. Does he need to get rid of him? But Chen Bi was just being chill. He talked about the time during the entrance ceremony when Aster fought with students from the combat department. He wanted to know how he was so tough. Our boy takes a big breath of relief. Ah, the fight with the useless kid. Well, he did not brag. He simply said that they just don't have enough mana yet to be able to properly fight him. Chen Bi seemed to get the idea, and he laughed it off. He then told Aster that it was nothing serious, he just wanted to be around him. Well, he did not have any friends yet, and he found it tough to join the other groups. Being alone felt awkward, and he guessed Aster would get what he meant. Aster started thinking about how the academy liked to say everyone was equal. But for real, students still treated each other differently. He figured out that poor kids like him usually ended up alone. But, well, he said that honestly he did not care if that guy wanted to stick to him or not. The guy just felt glad now, and he wasn't as nervous anymore, thanks to our boy's kindness. Then, they started talking and chit-chatting for a bit. Somehow, Aster started getting this weird feeling, like this was how normal friends talked. In his life, only the wildest people wanted to talk to him. He almost forgot how to have a regular, chill conversation. He remembered all the crazy people around him, Professor Baron, Wenji, Alfredo, and Damien. Suddenly, our boy smiled a little. It seemed like finally, real academy life was starting for him. The next day, students were back in the big lecture hall, all wearing their sharp uniforms. Damien was next to Aster, but he looked super sleepy and kept yawning. A few seats away, Chenbi waved at them happily and said hello. He complained that coming to class right after last night's huge mess was too much. But hey, school is school. Aster thought a bit about Chenbi. From their chat, he guessed he was not rich or noble, but he seemed confident and kind. Our MC was glad to have him as a friend. He was definitely cool. Chenbi then said he heard that their homeroom teacher for the M3 class was Professor Jaira. When he mentioned that, Aster didn't care and asked who the fuck that is. Chenbi looked shocked that he did not know this professor. He explained that Professor Jaira was super famous for beating a bunch of trolls all by herself. But then, oh look, Professor Jaira was already there, striding to the front. Ah, she was the professor from the new student ceremony. Anyway, Jaira started the class by saying she knew about the trouble yesterday, but told everyone to forget about it and focus on learning. She said they'd start by measuring everyone's mana. Then she asked which is more important, the amount or the quality of mana. Suddenly, she picked a random girl, Arjun, to answer. Arjun was nervous but answered that quality was more important if someone already had enough mana because it could give someone the edge when fighting others at the same. Aster nodded in agreement. No matter how much mana you have, if your quality and control aren't good, you can't hit your enemy. But the professor got a bit disappointed and was not impressed. She asked about her family, and Arjun nervously said she was from the Palaim Viscount family. Jaira's face got sour and said, well, no wonder the answer is trash. That hurt poor Arjun. She was almost crying there. Another student, Apol, got picked, and he got the same question. That nervous boy answered that for big battles, the quantity of mana was more important. That made sense too. In a big battle, the mana pool can really differentiate the winner and the loser. Our boy thought both answers were good. It really depended on the situation. But Professor Jaira's face keeps getting more annoyed. Then, she kept picking random students, asking about their answers and their families. The students in the hall started whispering that she was annoying and that they should avoid eye contact. Even Aster wondered why she was acting like this, asking questions but never really listening. Some girls were crying ugly, how wild this professor is. Imagine having her as a professor. I would quit on day one. Then Jaira gave her big speech. She said all the answers were kind of right and that there was no single correct answer. Think again. The student answered the previous question because of their own thought or just wanted to make her heard what she wanted to hear. She explained that what mattered most for mages was not just having a right answer but keeping their own opinions and beliefs, no matter what. With a stern face, she wanted everyone to remember this if they wanted to become real mages. Now, everyone sat there in total silence, just thinking hard. Aster realized that the professor wanted them to really think for themselves, not just guess the answer the teacher wanted to hear. He thought it was a pretty cool and new way of teaching. Jaira then called Arjun to the front and told her she would be the class representative. She said her answer was good, even though she cried a lot. Arjun looked so happy as she ran up to help record the mana levels. Chenbi suddenly whispered that he was jealous. Our boy with his flat face asked what the fuck he was jealous about. The professor then called her assistant professor. Suddenly, an assistant brought out a big shiny crystal ball. It was a mana measuring device, and everyone was amazed. Those things were rare and expensive. Professor Jaira put her hand on the crystal orb. She smiled, telling everyone to come there one by one and test their mana. Who knows? There might be a monster among them. Then, Professor Jaira was leading everyone through using the big glowing mana device. She told Arjun, as the representative, to be the first to put her hand on it and put in her mana. Arjun looked nervous but did what she was told. Boom. The crystal lit up in bright blue. She gasped, super impressed with the bright results. Jera then explained to the class that the most important number was in the center, showing the refinement value, basically, the quality of their mana. The scale went from stage 1 to stage 10. Arjun got a stage 4. Most kids from last year had a 3, so this was really good. Arjun blushed and felt super proud. Next, Jera told her to show how much mana she had. Aryan sent her energy in, and this time the orb turned gold. She got stage 17 out of 100. The average last year was stage 15, so again, Arjun was above average. Jera said Arjun must have worked hard. Bro, she made her cry a couple of minutes ago, but now she make her blush. This teacher is tsundere, for real. Meanwhile, Chenbi whispered about whether his score would be just as good. Beside him, Aster was sure that Jira's girl was probably going to turn into a hardcore grad student one day, working super hard. Then, Professor Jera said she had some business to do and left the rest of the mana measuring to the assistant teacher. All the students were excited, talking and thinking about how to get better at controlling mana and how they all needed more training. Chenbi told Aster they should go measure their mana too. Well, Aster agreed. But first, another student, Furion, went to the front. When Furion used the device, it glowed even brighter. The room filled with excited whispers. Furion got a refinement value of stage 6. Wow. Mana capacity was stage 20. People were definitely jealous. The assistant, Yorbi, asked Furion for his full name. To be honest, guys, I don't know if I should call Furion she or he. He looked too pretty to be a boy. But the story called him as he, so probably a boy, right? Anyway, it turned out Furion belonged to the same noble family as Dahlia, but probably from a branch with different colored hair. Yorbi praised Furion's results. His refinement was great, but his overall capacity could be a bit higher. Furion just nodded with his smug face. While all this happened, Damien was still super sleepy and only just woke up when people cheered. Aster told him they were measuring mana today, and Damien suddenly got hyped. He wanted to try too, so he zoomed to the front before Aster could even stop him. Aster kinda just wanted to hide. He thought Damien's excitement was always a little embarrassing. Other students whispered about Damien, wondering if he was really that famous Blando young master. Some recognized Aster too, as the kid who beat up a son from another family in the opening ceremony. Our boy really didn't want to be known for fighting, but too late, bro. The assistant then let Damien try. Damien just put his hand on the orb, and the whole thing exploded with wild energy. Everyone in the class lost their minds. Someone even called Damien a monster. The device read a refinement value of stage 9 and a mana capacity of stage 67, dude. That was crazy. Most students could not even believe it. Geniuses are just built differently, I guess. Even Furion showed his ugly, shocked face. Well, he is a boy for sure. On the side, Aster thought that Damien was on another level, the real monster of Blando. But he was not shocked at all. If he actually worked hard, this kid could have changed the whole continent's power balance. Now, Aster felt that maybe he could help Damien be even better this time around. The Blander family will forever be a thorn in Deculian's side, so he will make sure Damien rises above the ordinary. The assistant, Yorbi, praised Damien but warned him not to get lazy, since having lots of mana didn't make someone a master. Damien just looked happy and ran back to Aster. Damien asked if Aster had tried measuring, but Aster hadn't yet, so he urged him to go next, and Aster decided he should. Looking at everyone, too many eyes were on him now anyway. He also thought that, because he hung out with Damien and already beat up a noble, people must be super curious about his numbers. He wanted to seem average so he wouldn't attract attention or get more weird drama. Yorbi then asked for his name and told him to stand properly. Aster put his mana into the orb, trying to keep things under control. But suddenly, the machine flashed super bright. This shocked Aster. Wait, he didn't know the school lowered the baseline in this device. In the end, the device said his refinement was stage 10 and then just broke, showing an error that the baseline was exceeded. Red flashed everywhere, bro. This was intense. The class went wild with confusion. No one even knew the score could get that high. Aster was a real monster. Of course, our boy panicked and begged to try again. Secretly told himself to make sure not to use too much mana this time. Damien just smugly said this device is not broken, but our boy told him to shut up. When Aster tried to infuse his mana into the orb again, the orb finally showed a boring, safe result. Stage 3 for refinement. Stage 15 for capacity. The assistant let out a sigh of relief. Balance is hard for Aster, but at least he escaped being called a monster. Suddenly, Damien grumbled. It was all bullshit, with his angry face. Aster was shocked and wanted to know where he got that phrase from and just said he'd follow him. Now, Aster was worried that he had started a bad habit in his friend. Later, in her office, Professor Jairo was thinking about all this. She felt that the students this semester were skilled, especially Damien, with numbers only a real genius could have. She knew Damien would need special care, but Aster got her attention most. She noticed the strange error in his first attempt and made a note to keep an eye on him. Something about that was just weird, and she trusted her instincts. Back in class, Aster told Damien that only he was allowed to use the phrase, "damn it." Damien did not like that. He wanted to use it too. Chenbi just watched those two and wondered if they could maybe calm down and stop fighting about dumb words. 1 month passed, and now the trio was learning some magic trick. Damien was playing with his magic, and he made a dragon out of blue energy. That dragon looks super cool, like it was alive. With a serious face, he asks Aster if his magic is good enough, right? Across the table, Aster looked at it and thought that it should work just fine. But, well, they should make the dragon look even cooler, like it was jumping forward and opening its mouth. Dude really wanted an epic dragon. Looking at how precise Damien's magic was, Chenbi was totally amazed and shocked at the same time. He thought to himself, how the fuck could Damien do these things so easily? How the hell was he treating a magic test like a toy? Chenbi thought that even he could only make a normal shape before, nothing this fancy. Aster just looked at him. What a poor thing. Chenbi's eyes must have just opened to realize the world was really huge and full of crazy people like Damien. That's life, bro. Suddenly, Damien smiled really wide and said that he had a great time that day and that coming to this academy was the right choice. Aster gave a small, real smile too. He was glad to hear that. Later that night, Aster was all alone in his training room. He looked very serious. He looked at Callahan's subspace pouch. In his mind, our boy thought about how hard it was to open this pouch because he didn't have the right tools. It took him a whole month since he had to do it secretly, and he was busy with other stuff too. He had dissolved the elixir he got from Damien's mother with his magic and learned a lot at the academy. Now, he finally opened the pouch. Blue energy sparked around his hands as he did it. He looked inside and saw a small bottle. He thought it was a potion. Then he pulled out a red cloak, but he knew he couldn't use that. That's too big for his size at the moment. Next, he found a piece of protective artifact. He checked it with his magic, and it started to glow with green light. He thought the armor was pretty good and could protect him well. He kept searching in the pouch, thinking that what he really wanted should be inside. Then, he found it. There was a bright, fiery light, and he pulled out a fancy book. The book looked very important. This is it, De Coulon's Secret Grimoire. Of course, this was only the weaker version, but still, it's De Coulon's secret magic. Aster checked the book and thought to himself that the magic inside was not as cool as some others, but it did have a strong spell that could burn through a force field. Yeah, he knew he couldn't learn it all in one night, so he decided to take his time and master it later. Our boy suddenly remembered something else. He thought that maybe today was the day. The next day, there was a huge crowd at the academy courtyard. All the students were there, and everyone was talking. Damien was excited and shouted about the performance evaluation. He thought there were so many people there. Chenbi explained that all the classes were there together. He asked if anyone had heard the rumors. People said the test would probably be canyon breakthrough. Some students heard the staff talking about needing to fix up the canyon, so Chenbi thought that was a big clue. Aster listened. In his mind, he thought about how this midterm test had 3 possible types. One was the trial of the ordeal, where students had to go through a maze-like sewer pipe. Another was the canyon race, where everyone ran to the finish. The last one was a sparring match in a simulator, fighting either a person or a monster. But he didn't really care which one it was. He just wanted to finish it without problems. He looked at Chenbi and guessed that maybe he was the only one who was so ready. Now, Chenbi was mumbling to himself, planning a big strategy. He thought that if it was really canyon breakthrough, he could use his defense magic to block spells and rush ahead. He looked like he was ready for anything. Then, suddenly, everything became quiet. Professor Baron came forward. He told everyone that he was the instructor for this magic class, and he would be the boss for this test. He explained that today was the midterm test, and the event would be the trial of the ordeal. Chenbi froze on the spot. His whole plan was useless now. Poor dude. Professor Baron then told everyone to get ready. He said the test was simple. Then, he snapped his fingers, and a huge golden wall with a maze pattern appeared. He explained that they would have to go through this maze-like pipe and reach the final gate. But he said that would be too boring, so he made things a little crazier. He waved his hand, and a giant blue magic circle appeared. A big crystal golem showed up. Everyone was shocked. Some students could not believe there were golems in the test. The professor kept explaining that the golems were slow and not super strong, but they would still be tough for students at this level. The golems had their weak spots showing, so it should be possible to beat them. He said the students could either fight the golems or try to sneak past them. Some students started to worry. They thought it would be too hard to deal with golems in such a small space. In an open field, maybe it would be easier. But in a narrow pipe? Nope. That sounded rough. Professor Barron thought he'd make this test to make Pola stronger. After all, he's the one who helped him before. Though the other mages did not look very ready. In the end, he needed to make sure everyone knew their weakness in an unfavorable environment. He then looked at the students, trying to see who looked strong. In his mind, he noticed some students who seemed determined and others who still had some spirit. This gonna be super fun. He also explained the last rules. Everyone would get a test bracelet that could protect them like a force field. If the bracelet broke, they would be out of the test, and the golems would ignore them. He said the system was great for competition. Then, he said that if anyone did something really impressive, like finishing fast or beating lots of opponents, he would give them a special reward. He promised it would be something worth their time. Hearing this, Aster grinned. In his mind, he thought that this was the chance he wanted. He was ready to go for that reward. He remembers the fancy library called Lapidar. This place was so big, it looked like it held every book in the world. The library had 3 floors: upper, middle, and lower. Only special people, like the imperial family or rich nobles, could go to the middle and upper floors. The normal students could only go to the lower floor, which was kind of boring. Poor Aster, he needed to find a clue about something called the stigma, but he couldn't even find a single magic book downstairs. The only way up? He needed 3 professors to recommend him, or he had to win a special reward. Now, this is the exact time to get that reward. He didn't even want to stand out, but somehow, trouble always found him. He had already memorized the maze for the test anyway, so he was feeling pretty smug. He decided that he would make this test super easy for himself. Then, Professor Barron finished the meeting about the test. He told the students to go get what they needed from the assistant professor. And dude, chaos broke out. Everyone rushed at the assistant like it was a Black Friday sale. One student asked the assistant if he could get bomb flowers and ignition stones. The assistant just said that this was denied because his magic was already fire-based. Another student tried to get a golem controller, but that was denied too. The assistant was just not having it. Our boy watched all this and thought that the students looked more like street goons than real mages. Then, Damien walked up, smiling. He asked for vine seeds. The assistant was confused because Damien didn't even have a special magic attribute for it, but Damien showed that he could still do plant magic. He made a tiny sprout pop up from the ground, and the assistant just shrugged and gave him the seeds. Damien walked away happily, and Chenbi watched him, looking super nervous and sweaty. Aster noticed that even Damien, who usually just messed around, was trying hard to prepare. He wondered if Chenbi would finally show what he could do this time. Suddenly, the assistant said that the starting points were ready. The students checked the map and started moving to their places around the giant maze. Sadly, our boy is not moving with his friend. He found out he was at starting point 3, but he didn't know any of the other students in his team. He remembered his old days, working with strangers, and thought it was always awkward. Then, a big guy showed up. He introduced himself as Dive. Now dude, this guy has a super punchable face, to be honest. He wasn't from Aster's class, and he had 2 friends with him. Dive then told Aster that he heard Aster was pretty skilled and wanted to make a deal. He said he would buy the bracelets for the one failed and offer 30 gold coins for each one. If Aster helped take care of the others and make them fail, he would give him 90 gold. Aster thought that was a lot of money, enough for a whole month for a normal family. Dive then made fun of our boy for being poor, telling him to grab the chance. Aster, though, wasn't really mad. He figured these rich kids just like to use their money, and that was that. But Aster started to get clever. He asked Dive why the math didn't add up. 90 golds is too small. Dive offered to pay even more, then got confused when Aster pointed out why he was leaving out his own group. He explained that if Dive and his friends lost too, their bracelets should cost money as well. Hearing that, Dive and his friends got totally angry. The fuck? Does this low-born dude really want to make him fail? Dive then kept adding more coins, raising the stake for another person, but Aster just kept going, raising the price. Dive got super angry inside. He intended to make Aster his hunting dog and carry out the young lady's order. But since that dog is a mad dog, he had to find another way. He then looked back, saying the deal was over, and pretended never to hear it. But Aster stops them. With a smug smile, he said he still wants to keep counting their bracelet. If they want him not to bother them and make them fail, they need to pay the passenger fare because he will carry them. He made a gimme money gesture with his fingers. If they don't pay, he will make them fail for real. Bro is the most OP rage baiter. Suddenly, one of Dive's friends, Fakon, got really mad. He yelled at Aster, calling him a lowlife and saying that Dive was way better than him as a low-born peasant. But Dive stopped him. He was super duper angry, telling him not to make things worse. He tries his best to stay low, because the young lady's order is more important than these fools. He just wanted to get out of there and decided to give our boy his carry fare shit for some gold coins. And he said to Aster that he will back down now, but don't ever try something funny again in front of him. Then, it was time for the real test. Professor Barron reminded everyone of the rules. If a student's bracelet shield broke, they would be out and teleported away, so nobody would get hurt. The bracelets would keep everyone safe. He told everyone to begin, and the students were teleported into the maze. Everything looked good. The staff now gained access from the screen to see every student and control everything. Until one of the screens suddenly went all fuzzy and turned off. The staff panicked, but Professor Barron said he already knew something was happening at one of the starting points. That was the starting point 3, Aster's group. Everyone in the control room panicked a little. Nobody could see what was happening at starting point 3 now. Inside the maze, Aster stood in front of Dive, Fakon, and their other friend. His eyes were glowing bright with anger. Aster told the young masters that he was adding a 320 gold charge for their bad attitude and funny shit prank. Now, those stupid brats have already used their spells and aim at our protagonist, no chill at all. And Aster? He just wanted to get this over with fast. Of course, Dive, surrounded by fire magic like he was some kind of boss, started talking trash. He basically dared Aster to keep acting cool. Dive's team then went full tryhard mode, blasting magic at him, and Aster just started to move. Our hero was not stressed at all. He figured out the rules quick. If magic hits him, he's gone. So he just dodged everything and planned to smack them back the old-fashioned way. No magic. After all, punching those brat would make him feel better. With smooth moves, he dodged the attack and knocked out one Dive's goons, making sure to pull his magic away right before hitting anyone. So his punches did not get them eliminated yet. The next unlucky kid just got decked in the jaw, and Aster thought this new way of fighting actually felt pretty good. Bro was just flexing on everyone, dodging spells and dropping Dive's whole squad like it was a joke. When he finished, Aster was basically standing like a king in the middle of a heap of groaning students. He made a show of calculating how much Dive owed for being a pain, calling it an insolence fee that added up to 320 gold. And from now on, 1 silver coin whenever he punches those fucker. This guy was hustling even during exams, respect. Dive, now shaking with fear and looking like he got run over by a truck coon, tried to talk tough. But Aster just ignored the whining, promised to subtract 1 silver for every hit, and then blasted Dive so hard his bracelet fried. The poor dude screamed, got eliminated, and our MC totally acted like he was the real victim there. He coolly picked up the bracelets from the people he beat and stuffed them in his pocket. 6 in total. Dude was collecting them like trading cards. But he started thinking. He needed recommendations from 3 professors to get Baron's special reward, but he was missing 2. So he wondered what kind of crazy spectacle would impress Baron. He even considered blowing up the whole arena, snapping 4 pillars and just wrecking the joint, but he decided that would turn the whole continent against him, which sounded like a bad time, even for him. So he just stretched and figured he'd better get moving. But he was also kind of curious how everyone else was surviving out there. Meanwhile, in some other part of this massive death maze, total chaos was going on. Random students were losing their minds, yelling that whatever was happening had to be cheating, and freaking out because they were all getting eliminated by the minute. Then there was Damien, who looked totally unhinged, his eyes glowing red and yellow like some demon. And he had this red golem under his complete control, wrapped in green vines. The other students were basically begging for mercy, but Damien just grinned and told them, no way. Dude was having the time of his life controlling the golem, and everyone else was getting wrecked or blocked by those crazy vines. One guy even shouted, asking how the hell Damien could control a golem with just seed magic, but honestly, nobody had answers. In another spot, Chenbi, the only normal guy here, was just trying to survive. He told everyone he didn't want trouble. He just wanted to pass. But of course, the other students tried to bully him, yelling that he should give up his bracelet because he was a commoner. While they argued and plotted to backstab each other, Chenbi realized this was his best chance to slip away, since he had zero interest in playing their psycho games. So he tried to make a break for it across a stone bridge, just focused on passing. But then his bracelet started flashing red, and he freaked out, thinking he'd been hit by a spell without noticing. He slumped down, waiting to get teleported out, but surprise, nothing happened. Super weird. Then, out of nowhere, this creepy, unknown voice started speaking in everyone's head. Chenbi looked around, spooked, and his face went all serious. The voice said the students wouldn't know who they were, but anyone who did would understand why this was happening. It wasn't even asking for anything, just talking about a price for offending a great being, which sounded like full-on villain nonsense. Even Damien, who was having way too much fun with his golem, stopped and got seriously creeped out. The voice just kept going, telling everyone they were going to die today. No threats, no negotiations, just straight-up doom. Meanwhile, the control room was complete chaos. All the monitors went crazy, showing red static. One staff member yelled that nothing was working, and another panicked about the magic cameras being down. Some supervisor told them to stop freaking out and to fetch the professors, especially Professor Polina, as fast as possible. Multiple people ran around, yelling to contact the headmaster. Professor Barron, the only one who seemed scarier than the enemy, was standing in the middle of it all, absolutely enraged and literally crushing the table. His eyes were glowing like a demon. Someone was definitely going to pay for this. Back in the arena, things just kept getting worse. The whole atmosphere was growing dark and dangerous. A massive golem woke up, blue sparks flying over its stone body. Aster, being Aster, just ran his hand through his hair, clearly annoyed and not even a little scared. He looked around, standing on top of some rubble, and saw a whole army of golems waking up, their eyes burning with red evil light. Our boy just stared straight at the madness, totally done with all of it, and wondered what the hell kind of insane mess he had walked into this time. So, it had only been about 10 minutes since that creepy voice hijacked the test, and Aster was sprinting through narrow stone halls with a bunch of black golems chasing him. And these weren't the slow, dumb kind of golems he expected. Nah, these things were suddenly super fast and way too smart, like someone gave them an energy drink and a GPS tracker for Aster's face. Everywhere he turned, there were more golems, red eyes glowing, all out for our boy's head. He figured someone must have seriously messed with the Academy's control system because there was no way this many golems should be active. But did he freak out? Nope. The guy just grinned like a maniac and reminded himself he was troubleshooter number 1. He basically promised to wipe out whatever jerk was behind this mess, and all their little stone pets too. Now, on the other side of the maze, poor Chenbi was dragging himself along, already regretting life. The guy was thinking he should have just failed the test on purpose and gone home for a nap. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Was it a survivor? Nope, it was Aster, looking all intense, with a giant golem right on his heels. Chenbi could barely get Aster's name out, but our MC just told him to run and, no joke, dragged him along like they were racing against the apocalypse. Chenbi was screaming his lungs out, but Aster had no time for drama. He realized saving Chenbi the normal way was pointless, so he went for plan B. While they were sprinting, he told him to give him his bracelet. Chenbi looked confused, but Aster explained, in his own bossy way, that the bracelets were basically snitching on them, broadcasting their location to every golem in the maze. He said he was already a walking target, so if Chenbi ditched his bracelet, he might actually survive. Plus, he pointed out, Chenbi had a family waiting for him, so he should live if he could. That hit Chenbi right in the feels. He started thinking about his family, his parents who bought him a magic book instead of dinner, his little sister who had to drop out of school for him. He got super emotional, but he realized Aster was right. Sometimes the ones who can live should just freaking live. So, he gave the bracelet, running away as fast as he could. He was all fired up, telling himself he had to survive for his family, even if he felt like a coward for leaving Aster behind. But as he ran, the guilt started eating away at him. Was he even worthy of feeling proud? Abandoning a friend like that? Then, dude just snapped. He told himself he would not let the shame break him. With his resolve back, golden magic exploded around him, and he started casting his strongest spell. This was no baby magic either. Chenbi remembered his old master, the dude who taught him the spell called Spear of the Earth. He screamed, begging the magic to work, and then, boom, massive golden spikes ripped out of the ground, blasting through everything, including one of those nasty golems. Honestly, it was an insane move for a guy who was just crying a minute ago. Aster actually felt the magic hit. He could tell right away that this was no ordinary earth manipulation. Chenbi had just rewritten the whole maze with that one spell. He rushed over and found Chenbi knocked out, blood everywhere, but still grinning like an idiot. Aster tried to help him, but Chenbi said the name of the magic is Spear of Earth, and the name was a bit grand. Aster tried to act tough, saying the spell's name wasn't that flashy, but then admitted it kinda cool, and told Chenbi that, in the end, magic only matters if the mage using it is worth something. Chenbi was totally moved. He tried to thank Aster, but our boy just jammed a potion into his mouth. No time for hugs or tears, bro. Chenbi choked and spluttered, saying it burned like hell, but at least he was alive. Aster realized he couldn't just drag Chenbi around, but he also couldn't leave him to die. Not that he'd ever admit he cared. While Chenbi marveled at how wild healing potions were, our boy closed his eyes and sent out his mana like a radar, mapping out exactly where they needed to go. He told Chenbi to run straight, always take the right path at every fork, and he'd find the other students for safety. Chenbi wanted to know what Aster would do, but our MC just stared off into the distance. He could sense something was really wrong up ahead. The energy in the maze felt familiar, but it wasn't Declan's style. So, Aster told him he had something important to check, and walked off alone, looking all serious. He couldn't just ignore it and could tell something bad was coming. See, our hero was about to step right into the next bad thing. Now, Aster was running through the maze, cool as ever, but suddenly stopped. Something up ahead was giving him the worst feeling. And bro, you know it's bad when Aster gets nervous. He peeked around the corner, and all he could think was that he kind of felt familiar with this magic. It wasn't Declan's magic style, but something else. Something that absolutely sucked. Then bam! Out of nowhere, a giant swirling mess of dark purple and pink energy popped up, turning the whole corridor into a nightmare zone. Our MC instantly knew what this was. A demonic realm, dude. As if normal golems weren't enough, now they had to deal with demon problems too. Anyway, he totally recognized the creepy energy. No way anyone could forget something that nasty. And just to make things worse, a bunch of demon monsters started crawling out of the purple mist, looking like they were straight out of a horror movie. Aster could tell these were the same cursed creatures that messed up the continent ages ago. He just had to sigh, because, honestly, whoever set this up really had a knack for picking the worst ideas. Right then, Aster's eyes flashed blue and he gritted his teeth. He figured out who was behind this garbage. Friesen. Man, he was not happy to see that guy's name pop up again. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the maze, a guy named Friesen was living his best evil scientist life. He was grinning like a lunatic, loving every second of the chaos. He was ranting about how everything was working perfectly thanks to his ancient artifact. He was all, "Look at me. I finally did it," and kept rambling about how this evil energy let him take over the whole maze. Standing next to him was a dude in a mask, looking all mysterious and clearly not amused. The mask guy was basically like, "Wait, you tried something you weren't even sure would work?" But Friesen just shrugged and said, "Hey, as long as the contract is fulfilled and the target professor gets corrupted, who cares how it happens?" The masked man didn't care about the details, as long as Xenian Academy, the place protecting the professor, ended up disgraced. Friesen, being the troll he is, gave a fake little bow, but deep down, he mocked the guy about his noble family, which nearly got him in trouble. That man is just a vassal family under Declan, but acting like he was Declan's heir or something. The masked guy threatened him, saying if he ever mentioned his family's name again, things would get ugly. Now, even though Friesen was rolling his eyes inside, he decided to hold his tongue since, at the end of the day, he'd get a shiny lab to play with once the deal was done. What he really cared about was that his forbidden sect had finally made a perfect demonic realm, and he was pretty much losing it with excitement, thinking all the old cultists would be drooling over his work. The masked guy then got to business and asked Friesen how long it would take to finish the job, warning him a student was about to show up. Friesen was surprised, but then got super hyped. He said the first test subject was finally here and started acting like a mad scientist, wondering what would happen if someone got blasted with all this evil energy. He asked the man what would happen if a person were exposed to the demonic energy of this level. The ancient text says those with mana, or ether, are different. They could go to human beastification when they become insane like a beast, and only madness remains. Now, looking at the monitor, He wonders what that poor student gonna become after touching the dark mana. Cut to the maze, where demonic beasts and a giant golem were guarding the corridor with the dark mana, purple energy everywhere. Aster, still acting like a boss, just smirked and thought that since there was nowhere to run, he might as well go all in. He even seemed a little excited for a challenge, which was kinda insane. But hey, that's our hero. He then looked at the monitor and said, "Wait for him, my dear Friesen." Bro, that almost made Friesen pee. How the fuck did this student know him? Then, Aster just grinned, flashed his test bracelet, and made his move. Friesen realized, way too late, that something was up with that bracelet. The demonic monsters rushed Aster. And this was when things got wild. He blasted forward and moved so fast nobody could keep up. He hit all the monsters with the bracelet, and then just told them to fight each other instead. And bro, these demon beasts actually turned around and started tearing each other and the golems apart. Yeah, that really happened. Friesen totally lost it. He screamed about his babies getting destroyed and started panicking, watching the monitor as Aster blasted right through every defense, heading straight for the control room. He freaked out, yelling at the other man to stop him, but it was way too late. Our protagonist smashed through the final barriers and landed right in the control room, looking like he was having fun. Friesen and the masked man just stared at him, completely shocked. Aster, acting like this was just a casual hangout, greeted Friesen, "Long time no see, dude." Meanwhile, somewhere else in the maze, Chenbi looked nervous and called his friend. Damien, our favorite clueless rich kid, was covered in dirt and sweat, trying to play it cool. He asked if Chenbi had been well, while Chenbi looked like he had just survived a tornado. Turns out, Damien had used 3 giant golems with super thick, thorny vines, and was calling them his Cerberus units. And these unit was the thing that was protecting the other students here. Guy was way too proud of himself, honestly. Chenbi then saw a white-haired girl ask him how he got here alone. But looking at the bracelet in the girl's hand, he worried sick and explained about their tracking bracelets. He told everyone they had to ditch the bracelets, since that's how the golems were hunting them down. But the white-haired girl just looked bored and said he was being ridiculous. Another student with dark hair stepped up and got straight up suspicious, accusing Chenbi of trying to collect everyone's bracelets for himself. His eyes even started glowing in a not-so-friendly way. Chenbi just stood there, shocked and speechless. Man, he did not sign up for this level of drama. He just wanted to help this brat. And what the hell, why do they make him look like the real villain here? Anyway, our poor Chenbi was sweating like crazy and tried to explain that, hello, the bracelets really did matter. He said they were basically bells tied to the control system, trying to warn everyone that these things made them targets. But the dark-haired guy just leaned in, all smug, and asked if Chenbi figured that out by himself. The guy hesitated for a second before admitting that it was Aster who told him, but he didn't even get to finish. The dark-haired student's grin just got wider. He said he knew it. Chenbi got tricked by some gray zone delinquent into throwing away his bracelet, and now he was trying to trick everyone else too, just so he wouldn't fail the test. Bro, some people really love to jump to conclusions. Behind him, a couple of other students were whispering to each other. One said that birds of a feather flock together, and the other acted like Chenbi had gone totally bad just for hanging with someone like Aster. Yeah, Chenbi could hear all of it, and you could see he was mad and hurt. He bit back, telling them not to talk about things they didn't know. He started to say Aster was, well, someone who threw himself into danger to save his friend, but you could tell the words got stuck. Suddenly, Damien explained when he first met Aster, he was literally told him that they were friends. And with a flat face, he looked down at his bracelet, then just snapped it off and tossed it away like it was trash. He said he trusted his friend, so, screw the bracelet, he didn't need it. He told the others to do whatever they wanted and just told Chenbi to come with him. Bro, Chenbi was honestly shocked. What the fuck is the man in front of him? No way this stupid noble suddenly acts like a normal person. Anyway, back to Aster, and things are about to explode. He was standing there, facing down Friesen and this masked man. Demonic energy was everywhere, but Aster just acted all casual, saying it had been a while. He told Friesen that he once went all the way to a demon realm just to kill him. That, my dude, is some next-level beef. Friesen totally freaked out and started shouting that he had no idea who Aster even was, and what the hell was he talking about with the demon realm? He started yelling at the masked man, calling him a hunting dog, and reminding him that his job was to protect him. The masked man just looked back and forth, basically saying, "Bro, have you really never met that kid before?" Friesen kept insisting this was their first meeting. The masked man finally said fine. He had no choice, because of the stupid contract anyway. So, he told Aster that he was going to erase him without leaving a trace. The guy sounded way too serious. Now, in his own head, Aster recognized this guy. He realized the masked man was from the Vimar family, one of Declan's vassals, and those guys were famous for super-fast archer-type magic. Well, the Vimar family had this secret wind magic, and that their so-called hunting dogs were just the underperforming family kids who got trained to be these crazy frontline fighters. So, our boy was honestly just confused and asked why a Vimar hunting dog was even working with a scumbag like Friesen. The masked man was shocked that anyone knew about the Vimar dogs, but Aster wasn't letting it go. He started yelling, demanding to know why a Vimar hunting dog would be working with a rat like Friesen. He even shouted the same question over and over, getting more and more intense each time. The man thought maybe Aster had lost his mind from fear, but our MC just kept hammering the same question like a broken car alarm, until the masked man snapped, yelling at him to stop repeating himself. Then he went nuts, swinging his chained weapon at Aster, who dodged like it was nothing. His eyes started glowing yellow, looking super intense. The masked man was getting madder and madder, blue magic circles popping up everywhere, and he yelled at Aster to shut up and stop acting so obsessed. The dude was seriously losing it. Aster just grinned, saying the masked man was really worked up now. The masked man, all pissed, jumped into the air and started launching blue magical projectiles and swinging his chains super fast. He was confident. His magic was unbeatable. But Aster? He just looked amused and said that he had raised a dog before, pulling on the chain and yanking the masked man off balance. Bro, that was savage. He even told the masked man that dogs get super anxious when they hear repeated sounds, just like he was right now. Aster was full-on taunting him, and the masked man was raging. He yelled back that Aster was treating him like a dog. Our boy just looked down on him and told him, "Well, you are one. A Declan dog, to be exact." Then he blasted the masked man back with a burst of blue lightning. Friesen, watching all this, was seriously panicking, yelling at his so-called hunting dog not to get beaten by a brat. Then, boom. A huge explosion of magic energy, blue and green, rocked the whole place. After the dust settled, Friesen could see the man who was supposed to protect him was losing. Aster stood over him, looking like a villain in a movie, and told him that he was still the same coward as always, hiding behind someone else instead of fighting his own battles. Friesen tried to act tough, holding a creepy dark orb, and warned Aster that if he killed him, he wouldn't be able to stop the demon realm. But our savage boy just swung the weapon and cut the rat's hand. Friesen yells because of the pain, and tries to play the "if you kill me, your friends are doomed" card. Aster? He didn't even blink. He just stared at Friesen and said, "So?" He made it clear he didn't care about Friesen's threats one bit. Friesen was shocked, like he couldn't believe someone would just call his bluff like that. But Aster stepped closer, saying he'd wait, and told him to enjoy the show while the demon realm swallowed everyone whole. He warned Friesen that he was next, so he better laugh while he still could. Man, our boy Aster was on demon time, and Friesen looked like he was about to pass out from fear. And honestly, he kind of deserved it. Anyway, Friesen was a total mess. He looked like it was barely hanging on. He was freaking out, yelling in his head about how this wasn't just some regular demon stuff, it was a full-on demon realm. But Aster did not even flinch. The boy looked more demon than the real demon. What the fuck is happening? He kept telling him that he was the only one who could stop the demon realm. But our MC? He just walked up cool as ice. And just to make it worse, he grabbed Friesen's hand so hard the dude screamed in pain. Turns out, Aster snatched Friesen's purple gem artifact right off him. Friesen was horrified, thinking, when did that even happen? But our boy just looked at the artifact, all chill, and told him he wasn't the only one who knew how to use it. He even got nostalgic for a second, saying it brought back memories. Bro, you know it's bad when the hero gets sentimental about a torture artifact. Suddenly, Aster touched this huge blue crystal on the altar and activated it. He suddenly went full dark mode. How could he forget this bastard Friesen when he is the one who taught the young lord of Declan the forbidden magic? He remembered how the young lord survived after experimenting with a lot of humans for the forbidden magic. Because Friesen got blamed for everything and was supposed to get executed. Past Aster chased Friesen everywhere. Grey Zone, the kingdom's alleys, the empire's underworld, you name it. Dude's hands were soaked in blood from all that hunting, but he still failed to catch Friesen. Gotta say, Friesen played a mean game of hide-and-seek. In the end, the only place left for Friesen to run was the demon realm. Past Aster followed him in, fighting monsters and almost losing his mind, literally rotting from demon energy. Just when he was about to give up, Another troubleshooter told him Friesen was dead, caught by Declan, confessed to everything, and that was it. Our MC said he felt totally hollow, just sat outside the demon realm for days, staring at the sky like a lost puppy. Back to the present, Friesen tried to play innocent, saying he never messed with any nobles or young lords. But Aster wasn't buying it. He just held up a glowing pink potion and told him he'd lost way too much blood. And, oops, maybe Aster had been too careless. He forced Friesen to drink it, but trust me, that wasn't a favor. Our boy told him to rest for a second and listen to the rest of the story. Friesen, in his head, got all excited, thinking this was his chance to escape if he just waited for an opening after drinking the potion. Yeah, good luck with that, bro. Aster started talking about the time he stared at the sky after the whole demon realm mess and saw a wyvern flying around, looking free. That made him realize his whole revenge thing had turned into some sad excuse for living, and he decided to drop it altogether. Cold, but maybe smart. Feeling it's the right time, Friesen started to cast forbidden magic. But then Aster rushed to Friesen with insane speed, his eyes glowing red, and yelled that running into Friesen today was fate. All the pain and crazy stuff up until now was leading right to this moment. Bro, Aster was not messing around. This was the moment he waiting for so long. He started channeling all the demon realm, forbidden magic, and the nasty artifact, saying he learned everything after Friesen died. And since he had nothing but time, he decided he was going to make him feel every bit of that pain, piece by piece. He even picked up his weapon and told Friesen it was going to be fun. Our guy was on full villain arc, and Friesen was just lying there, eyes wide, tears streaming down, totally broken. Yeah, bro. Poor Friesen and his bad luck to meet Aster in this place. Rip him. Anyway, back in the maze, the whole place started falling apart, with cracks in the walls and chunks of stone coming down. Suddenly, light shined through, and a ladder dropped from the ceiling. Academy staff started pouring in, yelling at each other to hurry up and find the students, no slacking allowed. You could tell things were serious when the commanding officer stomped so hard he sent magic through the ground, telling everyone to save the students even if it killed them. Professor Polina showed up, hands on hips, looking pissed off because that demon magic wasted 2 whole hours. But she declared she wasn't letting anyone die on her watch. Suddenly, one staff member said all the magic had been dispelled and the security eyes were working again. Polina snapped into boss mode, telling everyone to focus on finding survivors, not catching the intruders, and to use their magic eyes or run if they had to. No big announcements, just go. Right at that moment, all the staff rushed everywhere, taking care of the wounded and looking for students. The professor was so lost. This crazy shit was happening in 2 hours, but not a single casualty from the students. Suddenly, Professor Baron called Polina and asked her to look at his magic screen. When she did, her face dropped in horror. On the screen were 2 bodies, Friesen and the masked man, lying dead in a puddle of blood with some crazy ice formation sticking out. Damn. Even when she had seen a lot of gross stuff, this was too much. She demanded to know who could have done this. Suddenly, she remembered about Aster from the document. When she was checking the document, someone said this student was a vagrant from the gray zone with a magic ticket from the Blanco family. Polina noticed the error code from Aster's mana test and said that it was way beyond the normal student level. The other professor said she agreed and said, whatever Aster was, he needed to be watched very closely. Just then, back to the maze, someone even more important showed up, the headmaster himself, beard and monocle included. He said he got there as fast as possible, but it looked like the worst was over. He thanked her for handling everything and said he was glad he trusted her. Then he asked for her opinion. Did she really think the student who made that gruesome scene was that boy, Aster? Bro, looks like our hero is officially on everyone's radar now. Things are about to get even spicier. Anyway, a week after the fight, our boy started talking about a thing called a mind demon, saying that every mage got one sooner or later. He said this mind demon was a total pain that just showed up and messed with your head, and most of the time, it ended badly for people. Now, Aster thought about his past life. Back then, he didn't have a mind demon like this. He was just a troubleshooter, a dude who just followed orders, even when his friends died. They called that karma, and if his friends hadn't died from forbidden magic, he probably wouldn't be this angry all the time. Well, he thought he buried that anger, but surprise, it turned out to be the seed of a mind demon. He was trying to subdue this mind demon, and this was a really crappy situation. It felt like he had a bomb in his chest, ready to blow up. He started questioning who he had even become. Then, he summoned the grimoire he got from killing Callahan. Now, after resting for a while, his mind was sharp and his body ready. RMC just smirked, thinking it was time to beat this challenge. This book? The Secret Book of Red Fire. In his last life, he'd only learned non-attribute techniques, but this elemental fire stuff was all new. That's why he'd been rereading the first stage, called Entering Fire, like a billion times, just to make sure he didn't mess up. He checked the mana circuit, said it wasn't that different from something called the Heavenly Origin technique. But if he just ran mana through it, all he got was regular fire mana, not the good stuff. So, what did our boy do? He closed his eyes and started picturing a mental image. A single, lone flame. It needed nothing, not even oxygen. It just burned. Simple as that. He imagined the fire inside his heart and focused super hard. As his eyes closed, he could feel how he was surrounded by golden flames. At first it worked. He made a tiny flame appear in his hands. He looked surprised and a little freaked out, saying this magic was way more violent than his usual mana, like almost double the strength. He tried compressing the flame, but the thing fought back hard. He told himself that for now, he could only do it once. The repulsive force was just way more than what he was used to. No way was he doing something fancy like collision style with this fire mana yet, but he figured that, with time, he'd get there. Still, he felt like he was one step closer to catching up with this annoying Deculin's master. Our MC felt pretty badass. He reinforced his original technique with fire now, and decided he needed something practical next. Luckily, flame magic wasn't too picky, so he could just use whatever worked. But then he stopped and noticed this crazy pressure in the air. Someone wasn't even trying to hide that they were coming. He grabbed the door, stepped outside into the rain, and looked up. The man outside said it was no wonder Professor Polina was suspicious lately. Out in the rain, Aster saw an old dude with long white hair and a monocle just standing there, the headmaster. The old man said our MC's senses were sharp and that he was handling that wild fire magic really well. Impressive, honestly. The headmaster just looked at him. Super chill, but also, let's be real, a little scary. Then, out of nowhere, he blasted a wave of blue energy at our MC. The ground actually rippled. Most people would totally freak out here, but our boy just stood his ground, even though he was sweating like crazy under the rain. He started complaining to himself, of course, wondering why everyone from Wenji to the headmaster wanted to mess with him the second they saw him. But he remembered. He was a troubleshooter. He could break, but he wouldn't bend. That was his style. The headmaster asked if our MC was going to greet him. Our boy got mad but still yelled out a super loud greeting, calling him headmaster and bowing so low his back probably hurt. He thought, hey, waists are meant to bend, right? The headmaster told him his manners were great but he should lower his voice. Well, it didn't matter how much Aster yelled anyway. No one would come, since he blocked all the sound around them. Our hero realized the old man came secretly, so he tried to draw attention, but this headmaster was way too sharp. Our MC finally asked why the headmaster was here. The headmaster said he was just curious, though he doubted our MC would be honest. He told Aster to sit. Suddenly, a crushing force pinned our MC. This wasn't just killing intent, it was real magical pressure, pure mana, and it was squeezing him hard. The headmaster started talking about Professor Polina, saying she told him Aster was hiding something, then asked what it was. Our boy was down on one knee, struggling to breathe with blue energy crackling everywhere. But he still refused to break. He thought the headmaster was a monster, way scarier than he looked when he stammered on stage. But then, he remembered someone even worse. Fahren von Declan. Compared to that bastard, the headmaster was nothing. So, our boy matched the flow of his own mana to the headmaster's, and just like that, the pressure faded. He got up, the ground cracked from all the force, and told the headmaster he had taken care of some rats in the Hall of Ordeals. The headmaster seemed surprised Aster wasn't even trying to hide it, but our boy said it wasn't a secret worth keeping. After all this, the headmaster said our MC's eyes weren't bad. He decided they'd do things his way. He would ask, and Aster could answer only what he felt like. Our hero was happy enough with that, better than getting smacked around. Both of them sat cross-legged on the soaking wet ground, facing each other in the rain. The whole vibe changed. The headmaster suddenly looked more like a warrior than some academic guy, full of sharp, dangerous energy. Then the old man started the questions. Now, his eyes looked wild, more like a war mage than a professor. He asked, with real hostility, what kind of bastards were the enemy to make Aster kill them so gruesomely in that incident? With that, our MC could tell, the anger wasn't aimed at him, but at the intruders. So he asked if he knew who the intruder was, and if the old man gonna do something about it? The headmaster said, of course, that he would get permission from the emperor and gather all his old comrades. Hearing that, Our boy knew old comrades would mean war major and knight he once fought alongside, and none of them would be ordinary. So he decided to tell the truth. It was Declan, the one behind all the trouble. He also said House Vimar too. The headmaster asked if our MC had any real evidence. But Aster just looked exasperated and said, did he need to spoon-feed it to the old man with the evidence too? Dude, that attitude. The headmaster wasn't impressed, saying his mouth really was rotten, but then he wanted to know how our MC even knew all this in the first place. Aster just shrugged and looked away, not giving up any secrets. The headmaster kept watching him, but then he just said he understood, like he was done asking, for now. Our MC was thinking he'd said everything he could, but there was no way he could talk about his regression or the grimoire. The real problem? The headmaster was seriously mad, and it definitely wasn't because our boy answered wrong. The old man was just furious about the whole situation. Suddenly, the headmaster changed topics again. After hearing Aster's story, he said his dream to build a library as tall as a tower was a meaningful plan. He asked to leave the top floor empty so he could fill a whole wall with books if our boy made it happen. That actually got our MC smiling for real. The headmaster kept going, saying he'd give him an admission ticket to the Lapatelli library if he did one favor. Hearing that, Aster's smile died right away. He thought, damn it, there's always a catch. The headmaster also warned him about the artifact, the same one Friesen used before. This artifact was used to build the demon realm. It was dangerous but super useful if handled right. The main power? Spatial severance, which would totally help with building that tower Aster wanted. Our boy thought that was true. He remembered that this artifact, spatial severance, could block every teleportation circle in the Hall of Ordeals. If professors couldn't even see through it, maybe he could use it to protect his future tower. But then he got worried. He didn't really know much about Magitech. The headmaster just told him to go talk to Professor Polina, promising to put in a good word, said she could be trusted. But even so, making Professor Polina accept Aster wouldn't be easy, not even for him. So the headmaster suggested another way, grinning a little. The next day, Aster was chilling in the dining hall, reading a book by himself. Then, out of nowhere, Chenbi and Damien waddled up, both looking way rounder, like they had the cheeks of chipmunks who found a candy stash. They both greeted him with big smiles. Our MC stared at them, totally confused, and asked why they were so fat now. Chenbi just laughed awkwardly. One of Chenbi's friends greeted him and asked if he wanted to train in magic now. So he said sure, then looked at our MC, thanking him for what he did in the Hall of Ordeals. Apparently, the info about the bracelets saved everyone, and now Chenbi's friends and their parents were helping his family out. Looks like things turned out really well. So he kept thanking Aster again and again. Well, Aster said that's not something to thank him for, since Chenbi was the one who convinced everyone. He told him the change was something he did himself. Chenbi looked a little surprised by that, but he took it in. Looking at Damien talking with a lot of students too, our boy asked what that boy did to make him super popular now. Chenbi explained that Damien controlled a golem with plant magic and actually made it work for him. Its name was Cerberus. Because of that, many people saw him as a genius and wanted to be friends. Well, that was insane, since Damien hadn't even picked an attribute yet. Aster thought Damien was indeed the real genius. Suddenly, someone came and shocked everyone. It was Professor Polina, looking as strict as ever, and she asked our MC to spare her a moment. Yeah, you could tell this was about to get real. So, next thing you know, they were in Professor Polina's office. She sat across from Aster, looking super serious. She asked if he knew why she called him in, and our boy guessed it wasn't for counseling. She confirmed it. She'd heard the whole story. Polina asked if Declan and Vimar were the main masterminds, right? Aster just nodded and was thinking inside his head that the headmaster had already set up this story for him. To be honest, he wanted to drop all the mess at the Blander house, saying they are the ones who trained him to be strong is the easiest way. But dragging his friend's family would be too risky, so he and the professor settled on the War Mage story. That War Mage was supposedly his hidden master and had a grudge against Declan and Vimar house. Well, it matched his actual life pretty well, so it was a perfect setup. In the end, Professor Polina admitted there were a lot of suspicious points, but since the headmaster guaranteed it, she'd let it go for now. But before moving on, she started to act a little strange. She blushed and brushed her hair, saying everything would be buried for now. Basically, no one would dig any deeper. She added that our MC didn't seem like someone who would threaten the academy, and she hesitated, blushing even more. But before she could get any weirder, Aster cut her off. He said, Sorry, professor, but he was a student and she was a professor, and there was an age gap. Oh boy. Polina went bright red and just freaked out inside. Like, what the hell did he just say? Yeah, bro. What the fuck are you talking about? How did this story suddenly become an awkward love confession shit? You crazy or what, bro? Suddenly, Professor Polina got super angry, and the whole room felt tense. But thank God she pushed down her angry feelings and even managed to say thank you. Yeah, she actually thanked our hero because he helped keep the Hall of Ordeals and the students safe. Aster seemed a little surprised, like he didn't expect any thanks at all after he made her angry. But he also had something else on his mind. He told her that his goal, the one the headmaster probably already mentioned, was to build a library open to everyone. He asked if she could sponsor him, like donate some of her books or something. She thought about it and agreed. She even looked a little bit pleased, probably thinking about how many school connections she had now. Then she got serious again. She said it was time to talk about the main topic, the ancient artifact that created the demon realm. She told him that researching it would take a really long time. And yeah, the artifact was super dangerous, but that wasn't her biggest worry. She could destroy it if she needed to, but the real danger was from the people who would come after the artifact. She named them the Forbidden Magic Society, Salvadium. Suddenly, out of nowhere, came stupid question from our hero. He asked what she said? Silvertown? Damn. She promises if Aster says something unrelated one more time, she'll rip his ears off. But then she decided to make it clear by explaining what she said before is Salvadium. Salvadium is a group of people who learned all the worst, forbidden magic. She said they all wanted to make a new demon realm, and Pryzen, the guy who actually did it, probably used to work with them. Now that he was dead, she told our hero that those guys would come after him, since he had the artifact. She warned him they'd be really persistent, just like Decullen. She admitted that she didn't know how strong Aster was, or what secrets he was hiding. But once the Forbidden Magic Society had their eyes on him, he could actually die. Meanwhile, our boy sat there, listening to all this, and just thought to himself that he might die. He wondered if that meant he had no choice but to fight them. But then he smirked like a total badass and thought that it was no big deal. He would just destroy anyone who came after him. He even said it out loud, telling the professor he'd kill them all. She kind of liked that. She laughed and told him he had big ambitions for a goblin, but then agreed to research the artifact for him. Then Aster handed her the glowing purple orb. Professor Polina took it and said she'd look into it. Suddenly, the door of the office burst open. Some random guy, another student, ran in, out of breath, and looking like the world was ending. He shouted that the head of the Decullen family had just arrived at the academy. Our boy nearly fell out of his chair from the shock. That was bad news. Outside, things went crazy. Guards were shouting orders and telling everyone to strengthen defenses and keep all the students safe and send the academy students to the dormitories. There was a huge, fancy carriage being pulled by horses, rolling up to the academy gates like it owned the place. The headmaster, Professor Polina, and another tall dude were waiting to see what would happen. So, the guy driving the carriage was Perrin von Decullen, the head of Decullen himself. The headmaster was thinking about how he became the boss at just 30 years old, and how the family only got scarier after that. Decullen was known for being super cruel. But it's only a rumor, so he shouldn't believe it blindly. But one thing is certain, and he remembered, is under the teachings of the first headmaster, even royalty must dirty their own feet within the academy. But right now, there is something different. Because, even though he was crazy powerful, the head of Decullen decided to drive his own carriage instead of acting all royal, which was kind of a power move. The headmaster caught on quickly. Perrin was breaking the academy's traditions in a way that nobody could really argue with. That guy knew how to make an entrance. Then, he looked at the headmaster and just said that he'd heard some vermin took over the Hall of Ordeals. The old man was already pissed off, thinking Perrin was here just to mess with him, especially since only a handful of people knew who was behind the attack. And it's only a handful of people who know that Decullen was behind it. Then, what's his motive for blabbering like this right now? Then Perrin announced that he'd come to help the academy out, since it looked like they were having trouble. He held up his hand and showed off a glowing red magic symbol, saying he'd caught the bad guys himself. And just to flex, he brought both the head of the Weimar family and branch family members along. He asked the headmaster if he liked this gift. What a show-off! Meanwhile, our MC was up on the rooftops, watching everything go down like a hawk. He thought to himself that, as expected, Perrin had cut off the head of the Weimar family. He wasn't surprised, because in his last life, that fucking Knights was the kind of guy who'd do whatever it took for Decullen, even if that meant helping someone who killed their own family. But Aster still felt weird about how perfectly he showed up, right after he'd told his senior about D: and Vimar the night before. Was he just lucky, or was he a total control freak? Then our boy remembered how, in his past life, he couldn't even understand him. He thought Perrin was like a force of nature, not even human. But now, watching him from above, he felt like that bitch was just a huge mountain in his way, something he might actually be able to reach this time. Our boy looked at his own hand and thought that maybe, in this life, he could actually grab his by the throat. After the drama, a few days went by, and the academy was still going crazy. Seriously, everyone was talking about what happened with the Vimar family getting stomped on by Perrin von Dekelen, and the whole place was buzzing like a beehive. But he wasn't done showing off yet. Nope. He decided to announce that a real direct member of the Dekelen family was going to enroll as a student. Talk about flexing, right? It was like he was saying, "See, my family is so strong, we can just send one of our own kids here as a hostage." Only a top-tier family could even think about doing something like that. And just when people thought things couldn't get any crazier, the imperial family jumped in. They said that the third princess herself would also be joining the academy. She was super fancy, with long blonde hair, a huge blue gem in her hair, and a dress that screamed, "Don't talk to me unless you're important." It looked like the two families had planned this together just to show everyone who was boss. But here's the thing, those big moves, that was all stuff for later. Our MC knew that these new students wouldn't even show up until next semester or maybe even next year. Right now, something else was way more important. It was festival time, bro. The Pistanike festival was happening, and the whole academy was throwing a massive party. Damien and Chenbi were both looking a little chunkier. Guess they'd been hitting the snacks hard and were super hyped. They cheered so loud you'd think they'd already won something. The courtyard was packed. There were banners, food stalls, music, and people everywhere. The Pistanike festival started out as a celebration for students who helped during wartime. But the academy was pretty much treating the Hall of Ordeals incident like a major victory. Probably just an excuse to make everyone feel better after all that creepy stuff. And get this, it was such a big deal that the academy even allowed alcohol at the festival. But let's be real, only the beefy mercenaries who worked as guards had the guts to really go for it. One of those dudes was laughing his head off, slamming his mug on the table and challenging everyone to a drinking contest. Damien, being the crazy dude he is, jumped up, begging to join in, while his friend looked like he was about to faint. Just then, a loudspeaker boomed out over the courtyard, telling everyone to get ready for the Pistanike award ceremony. Students started crowding toward the Hall of Sages. Our boy was not messing around. He grabbed Damien by the shoulder, dragged him along, and told the group it was time to go collect what they were owed. Even Chenbi got pulled into the group, looking a little nervous. But everyone was smiling. Inside the Hall of Sages, the headmaster started the ceremony, holding this glowing blue orb and grinning like he was up to something. He finished his speech and told everyone that the awards were about to begin. When the names were called, Damien looked shocked, and Chenbi was blushing like crazy. Aster stayed chill. He walked to the front, looking all serious and cool. Standing near our boy was Eveline Deplanche. She was from some big merchant guild, but our hero couldn't remember her ever being a big shot in his last life. He thought something felt weird about it, but whatever. The girl had student witnesses backing her up, so she got recognized too. Soon it was time for him to get his reward. The headmaster handed him a certificate, trying to look all official, but our boy just stared at it and asked if he could give it back, calling it trash and saying it didn't even look nice. Not gonna lie, that was savage. The headmaster got all grumpy and warned him if he found the certificate in the trash, he'd burn him right along with it. Our boy just smirked and decided he'd have to get rid of it secretly. After the ceremony, Aster and the gang wandered outside, hanging around the festival. They stuffed their faces with food, laughed a lot, and just enjoyed life for a bit. Honestly, after all that stress, they deserved a day off. Night rolled in, and the real show started. Suddenly, a huge beam of light shot up into the sky, and fireworks exploded everywhere. Damien and Chenbi stared up at the sky, totally amazed. But our hero, always thinking about money, watched the fireworks and just thought, dude, that's all cash going up in smoke. He thought it was a total waste, but even he couldn't deny how cool it looked. Then he started dreaming. One day, when he built his own tower, he'd throw a festival even more insane than this, with fireworks that would last a week. He imagined himself as a great sage, riding a giant white wyvern and starting a new era for the whole continent. I mean, our boy dreams big. Then, morning came, and our boy woke up in his dorm. There was a grumpy white owl staring at him from the window. He looked at it and thought, nope, he wanted a wyvern, not an owl, thanks. He folded up a message and got dressed, ready to answer a summons from his senior. Apparently he was getting called out first thing after the festival. Someone was working overtime. He even noticed the owl looked just like the headmaster, which was kind of creepy. After that, he climbed out his window and made his way to the usual secret meeting place. A forgotten old building, perfect for people who needed to talk in private. Inside, the headmaster was waiting, and our boy came in and wondered why the place actually looks like an office. The headmaster greeted him. He was sitting at the table and inviting Aster for tea like it was no big deal. Without waiting any longer, our boy asked him why he summoned him in this early morning. The headmaster finally got to the point. He wanted a favor. This was payback for the library access Aster had asked for earlier. The favor sounded simple enough. Deliver a letter to a friend. But our MC immediately thought, hell no, this sounded fishy. When our boy asked where he needed to go, the headmaster dropped the bomb. The Hamelern Great Forest. That place was ancient, packed with monsters, and loaded with rare magic stuff. The kind of place normal people would run away from, not walk into. Aster couldn't believe it. He had to find one guy in a forest full of monsters? The headmaster just shrugged and said it wouldn't be so bad. Just check the base camps and he'd find the guy eventually. Our boy tried to say something, but the headmaster interrupted and said he had a small something for him. That small reward? Bro, the list was insane. 2 top-grade elixirs, 5 high-grade elixirs, and 10 medium-grade elixirs. Even Aster started shaking, just hearing about it. Then, the headmaster casually asked what our boy was about to say, but he was way too busy freaking out. He was smiling like a total maniac. For that reward, he thought he'd do anything, even drop out of the academy if he had to. Anyway, now, our boy was chilling at Zenian Academy, which, by the way, looked like a total goth castle under a clear sky. He was standing outside, holding a letter and grinning, like he just won the lottery. He felt safe just looking at that thing. Then, he remembered when he got a small dark box and started counting his loot, thinking that after winning the Piston Award, he now had 3 top-grade elixirs in his stash. Crazy, right? Then he checked out this glowing, super rare ticket and started freaking out, in a good way. It was for the Arcane Workshop. Like, bro, even noble families had to wait in line for that place. He couldn't believe this golden ticket had ended up in his hands. Our protagonist was pretty sure that getting such a wild reward meant something sus was going on, especially since his senior was never that generous without a reason. Now, he remembers when he met his senior. The headmaster was just chilling, sipping tea like an old wise owl. And yeah, his actual owl was there too, looking super grumpy. The headmaster started talking about how he wanted to bring a certain friend back to the academy because things were going nuts with the demonic realm and all. But that friend straight up said it would be awkward to come back right now. So, the headmaster said it was up to our hero to go help that friend finish their business. Hearing that, our boy wondered if the headmaster even had a conscience. Oof, that was cold. Next thing you know, our boy was walking away from the academy building with his hands in his pockets, looking all smug. He was remembering how he'd argued so hard about being tricked into work that he squeezed extra rewards out of them. He joked to himself that he almost got beaten up for telling too much of the truth. Smooth move, bro. Then, he started making big plans for those elixirs, thinking he could use them to boost his mana capacity. But since he had 3 now, he didn't need to obsess over that anymore. He started thinking about this crazy technique called mana body, something he came up with by copying the steel bodies of flying knights using ether. In his past life, this technique let him break past the limits of a troubleshooter. Now, his eyes began glowing. He told himself it was finally time to remodel his weak body. He wanted to become a mage with the body of a knight, but with even more secret techniques under his belt. He believed he could reach way higher than he did in his last life. So, our protagonist sat down, closed his eyes, and popped a shiny golden elixir. He focused hard, breathing slowly, while golden energy poured into every part of his body, joints, muscles, nerves, the whole package. But dang, the pain hit him hard. Golden red energy were crackling everywhere, and our boy was sweating buckets. He saw it coming, and our MC was not happy to see it. It's the firebrand! He almost lost his focus. But if the firebrand activated, what kind of lucky encounter is it going to give him this time? But surely for now, he had to circulate mana through his whole body, not just his magic circuits, then force it into the muscle fibers. He screamed and cursed because it seriously felt like his muscles were getting ripped apart, strand by strand. Brutal. The pain got so bad he wondered if he should just give up, but then he told himself to keep going. Does it really have to hurt this much? Then the energy got even crazier, and the dark figure was getting way too close for comfort. Dude was yelling and swearing, blaming the whole thing on the mysterious force inside him. The ground even cracked beneath him from all the power. Finally, he managed to pull it off. The mana body technique worked. Actually, it might have been even better than before. He couldn't use its max power yet, but even now, he figured he wouldn't lose to a knight in a straight-up fight. Watch out, world! He thought that once his body matures and he adds proper physical training, a mage beating a knight with his fists would no longer be a dream. Feeling pumped, he decided to test his regeneration. So, in true insane fashion, he just bit his finger a little, but it bled more than he expected. But he figured it would heal in about 15 minutes. But then he noticed, whoa, the healing was way faster than before. He realized he'd just gotten an unexpected bonus, like a cheat code for regeneration. He thought, if he added the healing light secret tome he got from Wenji, he might be on the same level as Damien, the monster of Blander. Then, being the analytical genius he was, he started poking at the blood he'd spilt, feeling a faint mana inside it. He wondered if he could control it, maybe even use light magic through the blood, instead of his body. So, our hero tried it, and yeah, it worked. He was shocked, because the magic started from the blood, not from him. He got all excited, thinking if he used more blood and his other formulas, it could be scary, powerful. Next, he thought about adding the proliferation formula, the Blander family's secret healing art, on top of this, which could make his blood magic even crazier. Anyway, the proliferation formula is meant to regenerate flesh and blood. He almost thought about asking Wenji for advice, but then quickly decided not to get involved with anyone that nuts. Then, he remembered that Lancey will come for a parent-teacher meeting before regular classes. Maybe he will bring it up then. He grinned, decided it was all good, and named his new trick Blood Magic. Sick. Meanwhile, over in a busy academy cafe, Lancey was sitting with Damien, acting all calm and professional. She told Damien she was glad he and Aster were safe, and asked if everything was cool. Then she asked if there were any problems. Damien, who looked like he'd just had 10 energy drinks, said everything was fine, and basically told her to leave already. Then, the girl with glasses said she had a message from the matriarch. The blonde guy, Damien, leaned in, dying to know. She brought up Damien's big proposal about making an indoor lake and statues at the Blander estate. She chimed in, saying she didn't know who helped him with the proposal, but the formatting was on point. She even said the actual idea wasn't bad. Aster joked that the work was so tough it took blood, sweat, and tears, numbers 1 and 2. But then Lancey got serious for a second and delivered the matriarch's message. Damien was all sparkly-eyed, waiting for some good news. Then, boom, she said the proposal is rejected. The rejection hit so hard, you could almost hear the dramatic music. Damien was crushed, his hopes shattered right there in the cafe. But Lancey softened up and said it wasn't over yet. She told him to place in the top 16 in the upcoming academy midterm. Only then would she have something to say to the matriarch about his project. Aster was surprised, and Damien got fired up with determination. Then, she turned to Aster and Chenbi, saying that Damien had good friends, and they would help him, right? Aster, being a bit of a savage, basically said, yeah, right. But she flashed a big smile and promised that if Aster and Chenbi helped, the Blander family would reward them big time. As soon as money was mentioned, Damien's eyes went wide with greed, and he looked ready to run through a brick wall with motivation. Lancey asked if it would still be so hard to help. On the inside, our MC was thinking that his days of patience and suffering were only just starting, and if it weren't for that damn healing formula, he would have bailed already. But Damien pulled himself together and said he understood. Anyway, now, our boy, Damien and Chenbi were sitting together in class, and he leaned over, giving Damien a worried look. He asked if he understood any of the basic magic course, and bro, Damien just looked totally lost, and asked what basic magic even was. Like, really? Our MC's eyes nearly popped out, but he tried to stay calm and asked to see Damien's notes, or his textbook. The blonde guy, sweating, pulled out this sad little empty box and a tiny, beat-up pile of books. That was literally everything he had. Chenbi and Aster just stared, jaws on the floor. That pitiful book stack even glowed a little, but not in a cool way. They both pretty much screamed inside. Aster was like, "This is hell. This is actual hell." Then Chenbi tried again, asking Damien if he had at least finished the assignments on time. Damien shot his hand up, all proud, saying he totally did. Chenbi nearly collapsed with relief. Aster, though, was suspicious. He checked Damien's homework and saw a super ugly monster doodle on the paper. He was full of regret, thinking he'd just lost a year off his life for nothing. Blood, sweat, and tears. Number 2. He thought. This was pain. Our hero started thinking that the only good thing was that Damien wasn't terrible at stuff like history and culture. He must have been educated by the Blander family, so maybe he wasn't a total lost cause. But when it came to magic lessons, dude, if he had to teach Damien magic, he wasn't sure if he could stop himself from smacking him. It was that bad. Damien peeked up at Aster, asking if things were really that serious. Our hero just slumped in his chair, completely done with life. Right then, someone came up behind him and called out. It was Furion. Turns out, he was listening to their whole mess. He looked at our MC like he was sizing him up, then asked if he was really helping Damien study. Aster shot back, so what? Furion, with that smug little smile, said maybe he could help. Our boy looked at him like, you? Really? Furion told him to watch and pulled out a fat stack of papers. Chenbi knew what it was right away and freaked out. That guy showed off her collection, every academy exam from the last 10 years. Not just that, but he'd also compiled every professor's test style and focus points for all the magic classes, M1, M2, M3, the whole set. He looked at Aster, basically challenging him, asking if this was good enough for his approval. Meanwhile, Chenbi looked like he'd just seen the light at the end of the tunnel. He said, maybe, just maybe, they had a shot now. Our boy, on the other hand, remembered all the times Furion had made his life harder, especially for Chenbi, and he was still salty about it. But Chenbi had to admit, this was a glimmer of hope for the summer. Actually, our hero wants to punch this guy, but whatever, he'll chill for now. Then, Furion told there's something he wants as feedback. He asked our boy to help him with combat training after midterms as part of the deal. Since Aster could fight, he should do just fine. Our MC smirked, acting all cocky, and said he'd do it right now. He told Furion to follow him to the training room. Furion panicked, saying he wasn't the one he needed help with. There was someone else. Aster raised an eyebrow, like, someone else. Furion told him to come along and that he'd guide him herself. Now, out in Doshizen City, our boy and Furion walked down the street. He kept asking how much farther, getting more and more annoyed while the long-haired guy just kept walking ahead, not even glancing back. Aster was thinking they'd gone way too deep into the back streets. And honestly, he was ready to smack him. They finally stopped, and our MC realized they'd reached a private training ground. It was fancy, high ceilings, huge windows, sunshine everywhere. He figured whoever owned this place had some serious cash. Suddenly, a girl with crazy long white hair and a ponytail, Dahlia de Denai, greeted them. She called out to Aster, and he recognized her right away. Seeing that, Furion looked nervous and asked her if they really had to do this. He admitted it was wild that Aster had beaten the Dolan Fei kid, but he doubted there was anything to learn from him. Dahlia shut him down and told him again she wasn't going to use her family's power. She asked our boy for help herself, turning toward him with serious eyes. Then Aster agreed, but said he wanted to add something to the deal. He's going to need to borrow Furion to be Damien's tutor until the exam is finished. The long-haired guy jumped in. He lost his mind, grabbing Dahlia's arm and asking if she was actually falling for this nonsense. Then he pointed Aster and said he'd already paid him with those data collection. Our boy acted all cool and said he must pay his price to him, and he hadn't even gotten revenge for what he did to Chenbi yet. The long-haired guy looked shocked, but Dahlia just nodded and said fine. Hearing that, Furion was about to explode. He started shouting about his free will and how he was a proud member of the Denai family. Aster just grinned all dark and scary. He was asking if this guy was tougher than Hexter, cause honestly, he needed a punching bag. Furion was clearly annoyed but kept it together. He said time was short, the exam wasn't far off, so he'd go first in the training with Damien. Our boy felt grateful. He thought that at least this would help out Chenbi too. Now that he was paid, he'd do what he promised. He asked Dahlia if she wanted interpersonal combat training. Dahlia just answered that question with silence. Anyway, now, in a fancy dining room somewhere, there was Eveline, red hair, red eyes, eating and looking totally pleased with herself. With her was Dive, who looked super worried. She asked him to give her another chance. There might be no turning back. Then she asked if he was sure he would be okay. Dive just went silent. Then, Eveline asked if maybe he was pushing himself too hard, and he seemed crushed. She also said that the customers' complaints have increased a lot because of the Hall of Ordeals incident, all because someone somewhere failed to acquire even a single Hall of Ordeals bracelet, and she has no excuse for that. Then, she dropped another bomb. She told him that the midterm exam questions will be finalized by the middle of next week at the latest. Hearing that, Dive got all nervous and asked if she was telling him to steal the exam papers. She just smiled, acting all innocent, and said she never said that. He was the one saying dangerous stuff. She explained she was just talking about her business and wanted his help. Then, she slid a paper across the table, hinting that if he wanted to be careful, he could visit someplace she knew, where there was someone good at this kind of thing. Now, she was happy with that. She told him to hurry up and eat. She kept eating, looking totally satisfied, like a queen with a new plan. Anyway, now, our hero was about to teach a combat lesson, but his brain was running wild with old memories. While he stared at the training dummy in the academy's fancy hall, he thought about his history with Dahlia. Back in the day, things between them were seriously bad. He remembered that if he were his old self, he would have just told her to stop playing around and probably tried to knock her out right there. That's how much they hated each other. He even remembered a time she threatened to bury him on the spot. If she didn't always have backup, he thought, he could have finished her off dozens of times. But after she got strong and became the main mage of her family, they didn't meet again. Now, he thought, it was useful to help her. After all, in the future, Dahlia was the one who suppressed D: later on, and maybe Aster could make that happen sooner. Plus, he knew he wouldn't get another chance to mess with her in training like this. So he was going to enjoy it while he could. Man, our guy is a savage. So, our boy stood in front of Dahlia, who looked super serious. He asked her what she thought was the most important part of fighting someone else. She just puffed out a tiny cloud of smoke and admitted she didn't really know. She just wanted to learn the moves he used against Hexter. But he said that she shouldn't just copy him. She needed to find a style that fit her own body and skills. To help explain, he told her to imagine an 8th grade mage fighting a 9th grade mage. He asked who she thought would win. She guessed the 8th grade mage. Our boy just smirked and told her, nope, the real winner was the one who cracked the other person's skull first. Dahlia was caught off guard and asked, skull? Our boy told her it was called first strike, certain victory. Basically, whoever got the first real hit would win. That was his style. Hit hard, hit first, and don't waste time. After that, it looked like Aster put her training to the test for real, because the next thing you knew, Dahlia was flat on the ground, totally beat. Ouch. But hey, that's how you get strong in this place. Later, outside in the academy's bright courtyard, Aster stretched and looked pleased with himself. He thought if he kept pushing Dahlia this hard, she'd get strong enough for what was coming. Still, he wondered how Damien was holding up. Just then, he overheard some students talking, and his face lit up. He heard something about 310 gold. Bro, the greed was real. His eyes practically sparkled. Switched to Devay, walking through the academy halls, looking like he wanted to disappear. He was freaking out because Eveline wanted him to leak the exam papers this time. And he knew she and the Goldrin Guild could make his life hell if he said no. But then he started thinking that maybe, if he did a good job, he could make some powerful connections with the noble families too. He looked at the crumpled note in his hand and decided to go for it. Then he left the academy and walked through the busy city, heading for a super fancy tea shop. He thought the place looked way too normal to be anything shady, but this was supposed to be the spot Eveline told him about. He walked in, looking all nervous. A waiter with glasses asked what he wanted, and Devay tried not to look totally embarrassed as he ordered something called Dragonhorn Tea, frozen hot. The waiter just smiled politely and told him to wait. Inside, he let out a big sigh of relief. He thought he would have died from embarrassment if he used that secret password in a normal shop. Thank goodness, this was actually the right place. The waiter soon came back and gave Devay his tea, commenting that he looked a bit nervous. Devay made up a quick excuse, but the waiter just smiled, saying, most people expect a black market to look dark and sketchy, not super nice, like this. He asked Devay what business brought him here. Now, Devay tried to sound cool and said he wanted to find the Xenian Academy freshman magic exam papers. The waiter's eyes widened, but he kept his cool and said someone was interested in selling. He asked which department Devay wanted. Devay said magic. The waiter told him he actually had a meeting set up with the seller next weekend and asked if him wanted to come. Devay realized they probably just wanted to see his face and check if he was legit, but he agreed anyway. He didn't have much choice. Then, the waiter gave him the time and place, warning him not to write it down, and told him to listen carefully. Meanwhile, our MC saw them talking. Then he thought that this whole exam paper deal smelled like a trap. He knew it was way too easy and way too convenient that both buyers and sellers showed up at the same time. Plus, nobody even talked about money yet. Super sketchy. But he wasn't worried. He figured he could just go and check it out himself. He even had a perfect disguise, his D: outfit, for sneaking into sketchy places. With a flash of magic, Aster transformed, now rocking a dark, hooded cloak and glowing blue eyes. He was ready to play the scary visitor. He planned to see if he could squeeze some extra gold out of the richest person there first. Classic Aster. Back at the tea shop, Devay was bored out of his mind and thinking about leaving the city as soon as the job was done. He figured once he leaked the academy exam papers, it would be way too dangerous to stick around. Suddenly, a shadowy figure walked up behind Devay, asking if they took customers here. The waiter freaked out. He didn't even see this dude come in. That was Aster, of course, wearing his scary mask and cloak. The waiter realized who he was dealing with and almost lost it. He thought this was D-Colin's Crimson Jewel, one of their elite mages. Big trouble. Then our boy told him to quit the dumb acting and forget about the silly tea code. The waiter, sweating buckets, asked what Aster wanted. Then, our MC said he was looking for a special item, a subspace pocket. The waiter panicked inside, wondering why someone was asking about the pocket that disappeared after Callahan died. Trying to play it cool, the waiter lied that he had never seen that item, but Aster wasn't buying it. He asked about Divey and what business the waiter was talking about with him, saying, "The kid looks suspicious." The waiter started stuttering, but our boy had no patience for games. Mana crackled around his hand, and he told him to shut up because the sound of his nervous thinking was way too loud. Seeing that, the waiter was terrified. He knew this guy was no ordinary mage. He said he would talk, and promised to tell Aster everything about Divey, swearing it wasn't related to D-Colin. Aster said he'd listen and decide for himself, but the waiter better not leave out a single detail. He started to explain, but then our hero told him to keep talking as they went to check the warehouse. The waiter was confused and super scared, but Aster just said he needed to see things for himself, acting all suspicious and scary. Seeing the waiter didn't say a thing, our boy asked him again, is there something he has to hide? And surely it makes him more sweaty and wondering what the hell our hero's planning.